that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Loads to discuss, including the migrant who brought 22 family members with him. Why? Also, the Home Office last night slammed for being unable to say how many foreign criminal deportations are being blocked by European human rights law. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the one-in, one-out migration policy. We'll talk about the fact that taxes are going to go up and votes at 16. What do you think about that? There's lots more to discuss as well in other parts of the programme. We'll be on the debate desk with Joe Wheeler and Matthew Hulbert a little bit later on. We'll talk to Dame Chionwara. She's a senior Labour MP. We'll talk to Stephen Wolfe and Tobias Elwood about this Afghan leak as well. And plenty to discuss. Lots of people getting in touch about the CEO caught cheating as well. That viral clip of the man and the woman at the Coldplay concert as well. Let us know your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, and remember the main number does three things. You can give me a ring, of course, you can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can send me a voice note. Please make it less than a minute, otherwise Tech Up Dave gets annoyed. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, thank you for your company this morning. I'm here right through until 1 o'clock. We will be here tomorrow as well, between 10 and 1 as well, and then for Drive on Thursday and Friday. An Afghan migrant bringing 22 relatives to the UK is one of the top stories today, after relatives previously rejected for asylum were allowed in following that military data breach this week. We also have a story today in The Sun about Home Office ministers last night slammed for being unable to say how many foreign criminal deportations are being blocked by European human rights law. The government faced demands to retrieve the basic facts surrounding a growing row over the courts repeatedly thwarting removals of migrant offenders. Well, to talk through all the stories of the day, Dame Chionwara is with us. She is the chairwoman of the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee and is with me now. Chi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Peter.
Why is it, do you think, that the Home Office cannot say how many foreign criminal deportations are being blocked by European human rights law? There's a sense from so many of our viewers and listeners that Labour just does not have a grip on migration.
Well, I've got to say, Peter, I find that quite, remarkable in some ways, given that net immigration rose to 1 million under the last Conservative government, and that was a combination of basic incompetence on their part, but also that they refused to invest in our NHS, in our training, in our British people having the skills needed and a decent professionalisation of social care, for example. So net immigration, the vast majority of it was due, if you like, to the workforce policies of the last Conservative government. But the specific question about the number of people who have been blocked by the European Court of Human Rights, I suspect, I chair the Tech Select Committee, and I've spent some time where looking at some of the digital systems that we have in government, which are not great. That's one of the reasons why we are looking to transform, the digital infrastructure. But I suspect part of it is that, the data isn't being collected in the right way. And I know that that's something. The question is important, and we should have the data. But I know that's something that the government is absolutely focused on making sure that that government knows what it's doing.
Well, you've blamed the Tories, and that's fine, and they were in power for 14 years. But your party, the Labour Party, has been in power for 1 year, over a year now. Shouldn't it know these basic facts, and shouldn't they tell us what they are?
Certainly, absolutely, you should tell them. What do you say? Should know the basic fact. I mean, it takes time. Unfortunately, it takes time to get the systems in place to collect the right kind of data, or to collect the data that we need.
But this was a parliamentary question demanding from Baroness Porter, asking a parliamentary question, asking how many removal attempts have been stopped by court appeals. This wasn't a journalist saying, I've got a deadline in 3 hours, tell me this. This was a parliamentary question, and the Home Office Minister, Lord Hanson, said his department does not have the data on how many have been blocked. Surely that's just a very basic piece of information.
But the data, sorry, I mean, I don't want to get into the sort of technical details, but the data does need to be collected. But I think the really important, and it needs systems in place to collect it, and obviously the systems aren't in place, and they need to be. But I think the really important point here is that, that the number of removals of criminal migrants has, increased significantly.
But we don't know by how many, because the government won't tell us, and it won't tell us how many have been blocked.
We don't know how many have been blocked by the European Court of Human Rights. We do know that we've had, I think it's 40,000 migrants have been 40,000 migrants have been removed who don't have.
Many of them are voluntary removals, though. When it comes to mandatory removals, you're down into the low thousands there. I just wonder if you think the one in, one out policy will work, and if so, why? I've been talking about this for over a week now on these shows, and there have been very few people who think that it will work in any way.
Yeah, Peter, I mean, just to say it again, this is a huge issue. It's a complicated issue. It's one that's challenging many governments around the world. And so there's not just one, if you like, solution to it. There's definitely not one solution to it. So the one in, one out policy with France is a huge step forward. And it's worth remembering, that by leaving the European Union, we lost all that, the agreements with countries such as France and Germany, etc., that migrants asylum seekers would be sent back to where they'd first.
But the net result of those with Dublin, for example, the Dublin Agreement, was something like 19 extra migrants went back. It wasn't as if those policies were actually a panacea here.
Well, but they were agreements which allowed us to cooperate, and I think that in this huge challenge. And then one in, one out is 50. I think it's starting off as with 50 per week, which isn't a huge number, but it is, it is like 10 times as many as were sent to Rwanda under the government scheme, which the last government scheme, the Conservative government scheme, which cost 700 million. So I think it is a huge step forward, and it's a huge step forward just in terms of working with the French. And we've also seen the agreement with Germany this week, because as you know, much of the actual boats which are used by the criminal gangs to transport people to this country, they come through Germany, and we've actually got an agreement for a change in the law in Germany, so that this can be addressed, and that's a huge step forward. So it's not like we're not offering like one shiny solution and saying, oh, it's all going to be it's going to be better like that when we do one thing. That's not the way to address this issue. We need to smash the gangs. We need to take away their infrastructure like boats. We need to take away the environment, which means that the French aren't doing as much to address it. And then we also need to deal with some of the sort of pull factors in this country, and we're looking at that through ensuring that those who are working in this country have the right to work in this country. We're looking at that through having better tracking of data.
I think you're right, Chi, in terms of saying that the pull factors are certainly here in this country. A number of our viewers and listeners, and I myself, feel that there must be very few countries in the world where you can come in and receive, for example, a hotel, free meals, pocket money, a mobile phone and so on. And a lot of people feel, and I'm sure your constituents as well will feel, that there are many privileges given to asylum seekers who may or may not have a right to be in this country, far beyond many people who are born in this country and have a right to be in this country.
Well, Peter, you're right to say that there is a significant portion of my constituents who do feel that way, and part of that is because just what you said then about getting a hotel room, like at some sort of 3-star hotel or something, and then getting pocket money and a mobile phone. It's the situation in which I have visited the Asylum Hotel in Newcastle on a number of occasions to look exactly about the conditions that migrants find themselves in. It is not, 5-star accommodation. It's fair. It's basic accommodation, and some of the support which you just talked about there actually comes from charities and others who are trying to help.
They're still receiving it though, Chi, and there are many people. But there are many people. But aren't there many people who will look at those hotels, even 2-star, 3-star hotels, thinking, "I'd like to go there. I'd like to be able to have a holiday there. I'd like to be able to have a meal there, or go for Father's Day or something like that." And they don't. And they see people being given that for free, and they're not given it.
But can I just say, I tell you that you wouldn't want to do that in the conditions in which they are obliged to live, in terms of the ways in which they're in multiple rooms. But I think that the fact what you're saying resonates with people because they see that they are getting that they are.
Well, I'm glad you understand that, Chi. I do worry. I worry that other members of your party and the government doesn't understand that.
Yeah, I think. I think you're actually, Peter. I do think you're wrong. I think we do really understand that, but we also understand that it's really important to say this. The UK has a duty, to accept the applications of those fleeing persecution and in fear of their lives. That is a duty that we actually created. We actually,
even if they're arriving here illegally.
And the issues around the way in which migration has been handled, and the fact that and again you're saying in the Conservatives, but it is their system. That we have thousands.
You've had a year to sort it out.
No, Peter, this is really important. Tens of thousands of people applicants in the immigration system whose applications weren't dealt with for years and years and years. That kind of uncertainty, that kind of incompetence does not help build strong communities. Okay. I absolutely realise that. But that's why we're fixing that. We're fixing the asylum system. We are fixing the relationships with with France and Germany, etc., so that we can address the criminal gangs. And we're also working in country to actually address some of the reasons which are pushing people to make that terrible journey, as well as addressing some of the pull factors in this country. So I do think that this government is doing so much in various areas, and it hasn't all borne fruit yet. Okay. But when you look at a net migration figure of 1 million, we have got.
But the illegal and the small boats crossings are at record levels, Sian Mora. Anyway, listen, I want to ask you another question, which is about the fact that in Essex, over the last few days, there have been protests at an asylum hotel. Look, neither of us, I'm sure, would condone in any way any violence. But can you understand the frustration that's there? And I know your committee has done some work on some of the rumours and information that goes online about sometimes in regard to this issue and other issues as well?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And I just want to start by saying that any sexual assaults or attacks on women, on anyone, whoever is committing them is absolutely horrendous, and the focus must be on the victims of and the life-changing impact it can have. And I understand that there are concerns, but that many people, and I'm talking about my constituents here as well as in Essex, have real concerns when they hear either rumours or, in this case, somebody was charged of a sexual attack. And the outrage is absolutely right and understandable. And this, I think, started as a peaceful demonstration. Any kind of the police are there to protect victims, and they are there to enforce the law. And the way in which the police have been treated and attacked as part of that, we can see in these scenes here, is absolutely unacceptable. What we saw, and it's about a year since the riots following the horrendous Southport attacks, and what we saw then was that they were fueled by misinformation. It was saying that the attacker was an asylum seeker and a Muslim, which wasn't true. And so my committee has been doing some work to look at this balance between addressing misinformation, which right now the Online Safety Act does not do. We are not safe online.
The government had a rule there too in Southport to put the right information in the public domain, and it failed to do so.
It didn't, because of that's a really good point, because of the legal environment at the time. The advice they were given was not to put that information
out. Advice was wrong.
And I've been working with Northumbria Police, and I'm still trying to work with Northumbria Police on this, and police forces across the country, and that's one of the points made in our inquiry, is that you need to get the truth out there. But you also do need to deal with the algorithms that the social media companies have, which drive the most sensational, if you like, content, regardless of whether it's true or not. And so we need to ensure that we've got freedom of speech, and people need to be absolutely sort of free to say what they want to say. But to have that amplified by algorithms which are looking for advertising revenue, that is the specific thing that my report, the committee report, is dealing with. And also to give users more control over what they see, because this stuff can come in your social media feed and you don't know why, and it's based on some algorithm that you haven't got any right to see. So we're saying that you need a right to reset the platform's algorithm on you, as well as greater transparency on what those algorithms.
I think that would work. Do you know what the problem is, though, as well? I mean, I was on air when two things happened within a week. One was that awful, and I know there are charges in this case, so I'll be really careful what I say, but that awful incident in Liverpool, the day that there was a victory parade and the car careering into people, and we were told that was a white British man who's 53. That's fair enough. No reason for us not to know that information. Then a few days later, I think it was the Saturday after that, so we're talking 5 or 6 days after, in Leicestershire, a similar but not nearly as serious incident happened when a car careered into 2 or 3 people. There are charges in that incident as well, so I'll be careful about that. But we asked Leicestershire Police and said, well, you've given us you've said it's a man, you've said what age he is, a 31-year-old man, but you haven't given us the person's ethnicity. Now, I didn't care what the ethnicity was, could have been white, black, Asian, whatever. But the fact is that we weren't told that, and we asked Leicestershire Police at various stages. So I absolutely get your point that we need truth. We need truth, and we need a clear version of the truth from social media, but we need it from the authorities as well.
I totally agree with you there. Well, firstly, I'm not going to comment at all on any live cases.
Totally agree. Yeah.
But I think that in the principle, we have multiple police forces, and they have different. They can have different approaches to how they share information, and I think that is an issue which this government and the Home Secretary needs to look at, because and I think it is looking at, because we need consistency.
Yeah, we do.
But we also need the principle that the truth should be out there as quickly as possible. Now, the truth is not benefiting from advertising revenue-driven algorithms to get the most reach, and that is why we still need to deal with the misinformation. But I would like to see the different police forces have consistent ways of sharing what data can be shared.
Yeah.
And just to go back to the point we were making earlier, there's also a big issue about what data is collected. And that's what we saw, as part of the horrendous grooming gangs scandal, was that the data on ethnicity wasn't actually being collected. And that's one of the changes that this government has made to ensure that there is transparency. Because I'm absolutely with you, Peter. We need the most transparency and sort of fact-checked sources as quickly as possible. If we're not to... Now, I'm concerned for my constituents who are hearing lots of rumours about what's happening in our city, and it's really hard to get at the truth. And I know that because I've tried talking and speaking with Northumbria Police a number of times on some of these issues. So we need a consistent approach, and I'll be raising that with the Home Secretary.
Just one more question before you go, Chi. Votes at 16, yes or no?
Yes. When I was 17, I was elected as the MP for Kenton School in Newcastle. We had a whole, It was really good. It was part of the curriculum. We were all encouraged to think about, how we would vote, what the issues were, and I think votes at 16 and 17, when you've got a school environment, encouraging and showing what a difference voting can make. I think that's a really good thing, if you like, for democratic uptake. I just also think that 16 and 17-year-olds have a lot to say, and we have perhaps, and I'm speaking as someone who's in the House of Commons, we have perhaps a bias towards the older perspective.
But if you're 16 and 17, you're unlikely to pay tax. You're not going to be serving your country in the military. You're unlikely to be a homeowner. You're unlikely to have that kind of larger stake in the society that people who are over 18 do.
You know what? I'm not sure I agree with you there, Peter. In as much as you have your entire future. And it's right that you're still sort of benefiting from public services, but your entire future is your stake in the government.
Okay, fair enough.
And so that's a really important point and a really important perspective as well.
Okay, Dame Chi Onwurah, Labour MP for Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West, and also chairwoman of the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee. Thank you for joining us this morning. What did you make of what she had to say there? 0344 499 1000. Herbie from Harrow is on the line. Herbie, what did you make of what Chi Onwurah was saying there?
Well, Peter, I think we've lost the plot completely. I mean, say the country's on a spiral downward turn. I can't see anything that's going to change overnight. This government's completely out of control. It's got no control over anything. It doesn't know what to do. It's got no idea what the impact it's making on society and us as a whole with the way they're carrying on. They're going back into Europe through the back door. They're doing everything that we voted for to come out of. They're not listening to us. They're not.
Well, I think you're right, and it's interesting you say it's not going to change overnight. Well, it's been a year, Herbie. Do you feel anything has changed? Do you feel it's got better? 46,144 migrants have come across in small boats since Starmer became Prime Minister.
Yeah, but where's the money going to come from? If he keeps on carrying on like this, how are we going to keep on paying it?
It's going to come from you and me, Herbie.
We know that the government doesn't have money. The money comes from us. The problem is, though, Peter, the government is completely out of control of really what to do. It hasn't got a damn clue. It doesn't care about us. It doesn't care about anything other than it trying to be in power and to do what it wants to do. It's completely gone the wrong way. Completely.
Okay,
and
Herbie.
I think, we're only the tip of the iceberg.
Herbie, thanks for your thoughts on that. James says these commentators going on about how hard it is to stop migrants are laughable. Trump sorted it in a matter of days, says James. Ross says you should have asked Chi Onwurah, who says there's no single solution to migration, to look at what Trump's done in America, where he stopped it dead with a single solution. And Margaret in Birmingham says the time has come for Starmer to address this migrant invasion of our country. Call a Cobra meeting and stop the boats. No ifs and buts, just do it. Stop ignoring the British people and burying your head in the sand. Lots more to talk about on the debate desk. We've got Joe Wheeler and Matthew Hulbert coming up. Joe's going to give us an update on the weather as well. I don't know what it's like where you are, and I never lose sight of the fact that 82% of our viewers and listeners are outside London, but where I am, looking out the window, it is grim. Thankfully, there's a bit of rain. Stay with us here on Talk.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of people say that the media ignores a lot of stories. Well, the Druze story, the story about the Druze minority, is a big story that so many different outlets are not covering. We're going to cover it later on with Jonathan Sacerdoti, see what Israel is doing, see what Syria is doing. We'll talk about that properly. We'll explain it to you because I know from my perspective there's a lot I just don't know about it. We'll talk about this country as well, of course, the migration problems that we're dealing with. We spoke to Dame Chion there a second ago, and Adrian's been in touch and says if anyone believes the government doesn't know how many deportations have been blocked, then I have a bridge to sell them. They lie through their teeth and we should believe nothing they say. This is the story, well, two big stories actually today on migration. One about an Afghan migrant bringing 22 relatives to the UK after relatives previously rejected for asylum were allowed in following the military data breach this week, and also fury as Labour ministers are unable to say how many foreign criminal deportations are being blocked by human rights law. You would imagine that would be a really straightforward piece of information. Apparently not. This is The Sun reporting today that Home Office ministers slammed for being unable to say how many foreign criminal deportations are being blocked by European human rights law. We'll discuss all of this today, everything from this to the CEO caught cheating to the weather. I'm delighted that Joe Wheeler is with us, meteorologist and political commentator, and the Lib Dem activist and commentator Matthew Hulbert. Great to see you both on the debate desk. Thanks for coming in. On this migration story, the fact that we can't even be told how many are attempted deportations are being blocked by human rights law, this is not exactly a ringing endorsement of the Home Office, is it, Joe?
It absolutely isn't. Oddly enough, they can tell you exactly how many have been removed. That's 4,436 if you're interested, which is not enough for a start. But the fact that they claim not to be able to say who has been kept here because of the ECHR, that is disgusting.
I wonder if it's the same number or higher. Matthew, what do you think it says?
Well, you're not going to like this.
That's okay.
Peter.
Tell me what your thought is.
As much as some people may not like it, human rights are universal, or there's no point in having them at all.
But that's not the point. The point is we don't know the number.
Well, it kind of is the point, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of people would think that there are certain people who shouldn't have human rights, and I'm just making the point that human rights are universal. As for whether the government should know this figure, you would expect them to. I quite agree. But people may not like it, but people have rights.
Okay, do 22 people who were previously rejected for asylum, should they be allowed in following the military data breach?
Well, I think the military data breach has been one of the most shocking stories that I can remember hearing, and I was amazed on Wednesday at Prime Minister's questions how little it was raised, and was very saddened that although he mentioned it in his preamble, my own leader didn't ask substantive questions about it. I think the whole thing is shocking, and Parliament's response to it has been shocking. Look, I mean, the fact is these people have been placed potentially in danger by this breach, and again, your viewers and listeners may not like it, but if we our government, our country, our institutions, the Ministry of Defence, cause them to potentially have their lives put in danger, then of course they should be able to come here.
But what the point is that it's one person whose life has been put in danger who's bringing 22 members of his family with him who weren't on the list.
Well, I mean, again, I guess then a judgment has to be made about whether they are also in danger.
Well, what's your judgment?
It's with the ministry. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know these people, do I, Peter? But
well, if one person's in danger and they say, I've got 22 family members to come with me, I need 22 relatives with me, one or two, I can see, you know, I've got a child or a wife or a husband, I can see that. 22 seems to me to be excessive.
I think extended relatives to that extent is probably trying to play the system a little bit. Yeah, I agree.
Jo?
Well, the 22 family members, of course, is a headline, but on average they're bringing 8 family members, and it was ruled that family didn't have to mean a blood relative or even a legal one. So, for instance, if it was me, I could say, well, Peter, mate, you know, you come with me. Let's call you family. That's not right. There has to be some kind of structure in this.
Yeah. Listen, we'll return to this. I will also get an update on the weather from Jo in just a minute here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Dan and Kent. He says, all I want a government to do is protect the borders, police and streets and keep a healthy society. Peter, it's feel. Votes for 16 and 17-year-olds, loads of people getting in touch about that. We'll talk about that in just a second, actually, with Jo and with Matthew. But first of all, I want to talk more about Asylum, because we've seen at the Bell Hotel, this is in Epping Forest, there have been some demonstrations, some of them peaceful, some of them not, over the past couple of nights. We know, of course, that, and none of us would ever condone any illegal action, but there are many thousands of people there who are completely peaceful as well. What we do know as well is that there are lots of people in these hotels who a sex assault charge sparking angry riots there. Reporting as well from The Sun, analysis of hundreds of asylum seekers living in taxpayer-funded hotels charged with crimes such as rape, robbery and GBH. Jo?
It's terrible. I mean, whoever thought that it was a good idea to put immigrants into hotels in the first place? Just insane, as you were discussing earlier. The idea that somebody's getting something for free that you perhaps can't afford yourself is just really, really bad. And the places where these hotels are, I live close to a seaside town where we have had some migrant hotels, and of course it's putting people off booking the other ones. And that is the lifeblood of that seaside town. They need people coming in. And if you're not allowed to protest, if they're going to do this, are they not going to expect protests? Mm. You know, if you live in a lovely, sleepy, beautiful, pretty, you know, country village, you don't want a hotel full of migrants in the middle of you.
And this is a failure of successive governments, isn't it, in regard to processing, because these people are waiting to be processed, waiting to work out actually are they in this country legally or illegally, even though they've arrived here illegally. Jo?
And what's the plan in the end? I mean, are they going to rent or buy a property? Are they going to work? You know, how does it all work? Because close to the Bell, they've been seen outside drinking and smoking. Well, you've got to have a pretty penny to do that.
Certainly. Do you understand the frustration around this, Matthew?
I mean, I do a bit, but I mean, I think my first point is a factual one that, again, people may not like, but it is actually a fact, and that is that charges are not convictions, and people are innocent until they're proven guilty, and we have a thing called due process in this country, and again, that applies to everyone. Of course, people that are found guilty of committing crimes clearly shouldn't be here, and again, you know, the process needs to work to ensure that's the case. In terms of these protests,
so you would then argue that if someone has committed a crime and has gone to prison, you've no problem with foreign prisoners being deported?
No, I mean, I think no. I mean, I think if you know, I'm not going to defend people that have committed.
No, but you've no problem with them being deported because human rights law has been used to keep people in this country who have been rapists, murderers, for example.
On what basis?
Well, we know the flights to Jamaica, for example, human rights grounds, right to a family life, for example, has been something that they've said. Well, you've got family here in the UK, therefore, right to a family life is the basis that the person's been kept in this country.
I mean, I think I'm hoping to be consistent on this. I think everyone has human rights until such a point as they violate those by violating our laws.
Well, if you arrive illegally in this country, is that not a violation of people's human rights? Is that not a violation of the law?
I mean, again, you know, I've said to you before that I have sympathy for people that are looking for a better life. I think that
we're all looking for a better life.
I think there's nothing wrong with wanting a better life for yourself, but that obviously doesn't mean committing a crime once you've arrived.
Well, by arriving, you're committing a crime because that is illegal. And if you're bringing a child in, for example, who is getting petrol burned, for example, because they're on a small boat, surely that's violating their human rights.
Well, obviously that's not good. It's not good that they have to come via
they don't have to.
via boat.
They don't have to.
Well, Peter, they're wanting a better life, and there should be.
I want a better life too. It doesn't mean I'm going to a country that's not going to take me.
Your life
I could go to Australia, for example.
Your life is perfectly all right, Peter.
I'm sure it is, but the fact is that if I wanted a better life, and I said it's because I want a better life, and I'm going to, for example, Australia doesn't have to take me, does it?
No, it doesn't. But I mean, I guess it depends what kind of society you are, and I still like to think that we're a compassionate society.
We're definitely a compassionate society. We've taken loads of people from Hong Kong. We've taken loads of people from Ukraine, for example.
I mean, I'll get this point out if it kills me. We should have more safe and legal routes. That is the answer. Then people wouldn't have to go on the high seas to try and get to this country.
Patrick's in East Yorkshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Patrick, you're with me and with Matthew and with Joe. What would you like to say this morning?
Yeah, good morning all.
Morning.
I've got a 2-point feature. Let me get both out. First,
go for it.
I'll just answer what Matthew's just been saying. If I go into Europe for more than 90 days and I come back, I get a penalty and I could lose my passport. So how is that not? That's not correct, is it? I may as well come back on the boats. But secondly, all these high-profile cases, like Bryce Norton, they've got the video there, they've got the complainant there, they've got the 2 alleged people who've done it. You've got it all on film. How the government have got their sticky hands all over this? How is it taking till January 27 to bring it to court? I'm an ex-detective, and I would have had that to court within 6 months. So would Blexley. Peter Brexit would have had it as well.
Well, there are huge delays in our court system, Patrick. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And we've seen as well the person from Just Stop Oil, sorry, not from Just Stop Oil, from Palestine Action, who slashed a picture, a painting in Cambridge of Balfour, of the Arthur Balfour, who had the Balfour Declaration, filmed themselves doing it. No charges are being brought there. These huge delays in the court system are making sure that people feel that justice is not just delayed but also denied. Matthew?
Yeah, and you know, this is you know, without wanting to sound too much like a Labour minister, the fact is that this is another problem that the government inherited from the Tories and don't seem to know how to answer. And yeah, justice delayed is indeed justice denied, and the situation needs to be sorted out.
But if you send an objectionable tweet, well, then you'll see quick justice.
Yeah, Lucy Connolly was very swiftly sent to prison for 31 months, and I do wonder how we have a situation 3 weeks on from Bob Villan, from Pascal Robinson Foster, shouting death, death, the IDF, not even arrested yet.
It's laughable.
Yeah. We have a question for you, Matthew, from Jason in the Lake District, who says, does Matthew Hulbert think the human rights of those citizens should trump those who have illegally entered our country?
Say that again.
Does Matthew think that the human rights of our citizens should trump those of those who have illegally entered our country?
Well, I mean, again, you know, sorry, Jason, mate, but there isn't a hierarchy of human rights. Human rights are universal, and that means
but there is.
Well, I'm sorry, Joe, but you know that I mean, you can, you know, I mean, God bless you. You can raise your hands as much as you want, but human rights are either universal. That means they're for every human.
But they're
being,
not. They're interpreted. They're not absolute.
No
they're not absolute in that they're interpreted. There is a court to interpret them, Matthew.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, well, they're not. There is a hierarchy because you say there is an interpretation of those human rights and who has a greater right to a family life, for example, than someone who doesn't. Someone who has, for example, committed a rape or a murder, who's being deported to Jamaica, and this has happened, has claimed that their right to a family life trumps them being sent to Jamaica. So there is an interpretation of these.
Well, I mean, these are court decisions. I don't know what you expect me to say about it, Peter. I mean,
my point is that human rights aren't universal because they're not universal to everybody. They're interpreted by the court, and there is a hierarchy. That's my point. There's an interpretation of law.
Again, I know it's a headline case, but this Albanian drug dealer who argued against his return because his son didn't like the chicken nuggets in their country of origin. Well, now, if that happens, even if that happens once, obviously people lose respect then for the ECHR.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, look, what can I tell you? I'm a liberal. I believe in human rights. I believe in the institutions that are there.
I believe in human rights
too,
but you can see why people are cynical when those cases come up, Matthew, can't you? When someone talks about their son not liking chicken nuggets,
yeah,
you can see why people.
And that does sound, you know, farcical. I agree, and but of course, you know, it's also true to say that we have a media that focuses on examples like that because they believe it represents some wider cause that they editorially believe in.
Why would you not focus on that when it is something that is happening in the system?
Because there are hundreds of cases that are not like that.
Well, you don't say. Well, we don't come on the station and say government did a good job today.
No,
we don't say the NHS, you know, cured loads of people's hip replacements.
You don't need to tell me about the NHS.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm not NHS splaining to you.
No.
I'm simply saying that it is the point of a discussion programme on the news channels to talk about these examples which illustrate a wider point, which is that people are extracting the Michael when it comes to human rights law in this country.
Well, then those people have to be dealt with. But I think the vast majority of people who, you see, I've said to you again, Peter, you know, before, rather, I like to think that most people, wherever they come from in the world, are decent, and I think most people are. But of course, you're always going to get a minority that try and play any system, and those should be dealt with.
Well, would you say that the minority playing the system are the 46,000 people who come over in small boats, for example, because they're breaking the law?
We've just had this discussion, Peter. I know. Look, literally, they may be breaking the law, but number one, I don't think any human being is illegal. What they may do is illegal, but no human being is illegal. And number two, if we had more safe and legal routes, they wouldn't have to do it. I don't know. I feel like I've got to shout it to get the point across.
Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I was going to say, but where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
We're talking 46,000. You know,
since Starmer became Prime Minister.
Yeah, the UK is an island. Yeah, you can't pour a glass of water and just keep pouring the water in without it eventually spilling. You know, if we have to draw some line in the sand, where is that going to be? 46,000, 50,000, 100,000? You know, we don't have the infrastructure to deal with those kind of numbers.
Then we should have a system that works, but in my view it should always be a compassionate system because these are human beings and most people are good. That's my only point.
They are 40,000 wonderful human beings, I'm quite sure, but multiply that by 22 when they bring their families over and you've got an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
And we don't have the hospitals, we don't have the schools. There was some shocking figure just back in the week of something like 452 schools in this country which no longer have anybody speaking English. And that's mad. We can't survive like that. Why is that bad?
Why is that bad?
To the best of my knowledge, we're England. Do we not speak English here?
Well, it's also, you know, if you don't have people who don't speak English as their first language, it takes much longer to teach people. How are you going to control a class if they can't understand you? How are you going to give instructions to children?
Teachers that speak that language.
What, are going to speak 30 different languages in a class? You're going to say, we're going to give all of those children interpreters, for example. Where does the money come from for that?
I've said to you before, you know, was proudly born in Leicester. I'm a Leicestershire lad and born in Leicester. Leicester is one of the first, minority majority cities. I think that is a strength for Leicester. I think our diversity as a city is our strength, and when people from certain media outlets go there and deliberately go to a street where they know people don't tend to speak English and make some great political point about that, I think that is abhorrent.
Do you not think that if you moved to another country, if you moved to France, for example, would it not be a reasonable thing for you to learn French?
So I've got an example. My sister, God bless her, and her family live in Dubai. Mm-hmm. Do they speak Arabic? Well, certainly not to my knowledge.
Okay, well,
but they've lived there perfectly peacefully for decades.
But I'm not saying that they haven't lived there peacefully. I'm saying, would it not be a good idea if you moved to another country to learn the language and to try to integrate and to learn some of the culture and to deal with British values?
I mean, yes is the obvious answer.
Okay. Well, you can see why people then have a problem when people don't do that, can't you?
Well, then, yes, you can, but equally, I think, if people feel that they're persecuted, which, I think it wouldn't be unreasonable for them to feel, given some of what he said about these folks, then, if they were made to feel more welcome, maybe then they might assimilate a bit more, Peter.
If they're made to feel more welcome.
Welcome.
How should we do that? I mean, if you're saying to people, for example, over many years that we should have multiculturalism, for example, that we should bring people into this country, that we should open our doors, that people bring people into their homes because they're Ukrainian refugees, for example. I mean, we are a compassionate country. There's been many, many examples of times when people have come to this country, they've been given homes, they've been given school places for free, they've been given NHS care for free, for example. How much more welcome do you want us to make people?
Well, good. I want to see more of that.
But there's still lots of problems. There are still lots of people who take all this and refuse to integrate, and then you have a culture and cities where people don't, or large areas where people don't speak English or adopt British values.
Well, I'm just reminded of the fact that it was found that most people who voted for Brexit in areas where they said that immigration was their main issue for doing so were the areas with the least immigration. This wasn't about lived experience. This was about fear. Because people are fearful because of what they're told by certain media outlets.
Sarah says, how does Matthew expect people to assimilate if no one at school is British, or does he like us being several different countries in one?
Well, I mean, I'd prefer that people did, speak to each other and all the rest of that. But again, if people are made to feel totally unwelcome, it's no wonder, is it, that they don't?
Final word from Jo on this.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of Brexit, my local constituency is Skegness and Boston, which obviously voted out very comprehensively. Now, the type of immigration they have in those cities, town cities, tend to be Eastern European, Portuguese, that sort of thing, because it's an agricultural county, relies on tourism. And they were absolutely adamant in what they wanted, and I think that was a lived experience for them. I think they were fair in saying that. I also wanted to point out, I used to live in Portugal, so I learnt the language, and you adopt the culture there as well. But I know that if you go to Spain and you go to see a doctor, you have to take the interpreter, otherwise the doctor won't see you. Because he says, if you're likely to misunderstand what I say, then, I'm not prepared to see you unless you've paid for your own interpreter.
So if you think that's fair enough, would the NHS not then pay for interpreters?
Well, I think that's not an unreasonable expectation.
Okay. So the NHS shouldn't pay for interpreters then?
Well, I mean, I've kind of answered that in the way that I've just answered that. I think it's not an unreasonable expectation that if you're the one that doesn't speak the main language, that you're the one who sorts that out.
OK, plenty more to come from Matthew and from Jo on the debate desk in just a minute here on Talk.
slowly there was going to be greater alignment on certain things, not necessarily to our significant benefit, purely because of the financial cost. I mean, any amount of money that we're spending in order for British citizens to be able to use e-gates is not an amount of money worth spending. This whole, it is this strange Remainer middle class fantasy where they go, oh, I have to add 20 minutes onto my entire trip because I have to queue at the at passport control, whereas everybody else gets to use the electronic gates. And for that, we're supposed to give them how much money?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're on the debate desk with Joe and Matthew. Let's hear a voice note. First one of the day from Kate in Leeds, please.
Morning, Peter. It's Kate from Leeds. Matthew Bulbert, Lib Dem activist. What about the rights of the English people here? What about the rights of the children living here, getting sexually assaulted? What about the rights of our women getting sexually assaulted and chased? I don't feel safe going out anymore, going for a walk. What about my rights? I just think some of you are absolute jokes. Yeah, but maybe it'd be different if it happened to one of your family. Maybe it would be different then, Matthew.
There's clearly some very strong feelings around this. Just a quick reaction to what Kate had said from you both. Matthew first.
Well, I don't disagree with what she says. I mean, you two tell me. I don't think I've said that, you know, we as Brits shouldn't have rights. Have I said that?
No.
I haven't said that. And I agree. And I've also said, you know, you've heard me say it, that people who are committing crimes basically forfeit their rights. So I don't think I've said anything, actually. I think she's arguing a point that, with respect, I haven't made.
Joe?
Going back to the story about the bell, charged but not found guilty of sexual assault. This is what really sparked the villagers off. And at that point, Kate's opinion is totally valid. Yeah. I don't think we do feel safe on the streets anymore. It's not just from migrants, it's just, you know, mobile phone crime is absolutely horrendous. There's all sorts going on that, you know, even in the capital, you know, I don't remember from a few years ago.
Yeah. A couple of quick points from Bob in Cheltenham, who has a legal background. He says, with all due respect to Matthew's position, it doesn't seem to stand up to any basic challenge or scrutiny. Human rights often conflict. They're not universal. They have to be balanced against each other. And on the subject of interpreters and who funds them, if victims of domestic and sexual violence who cannot speak the language have to rely upon their partner or a family member to act as their interpreter at hospital, there's a real risk of offences not being reported. Just in the last 5 minutes, I want to get through 3 stories, if we can. Just quickly, votes at 16, Joe, yes or no?
That'll be a no. The Prime Minister says 16 and 17-year-olds are old enough to pay taxes. That's old enough to pay taxes.
In theory.
Doesn't mean they are. I've got a good idea on this one. You probably won't like this either. And that is only people who pay tax get a vote.
Oh, no representation without taxation?
Yeah.
Matthew?
Well, Lib Dems have long campaigned for votes at 16, and it's good to see yet again that on their best policies, Labour are following the lead of the Liberal Democrats. They now need to go the whole hog and introduce proportional representation.
Here we go. But why 16? I mean, what about Joe's point? If you're 16, I mean, most people haven't a clue what they think at 16, and also they're not, you know, you can't fight for your country, you can't buy a packet of cigarettes, but you can vote for the next government.
Well, my nephews and nieces, who are actually just about to turn 18, but 17 at the moment, are very wise, you know, very streetwise.
A lot of them aren't, though.
a lot of people much older aren't, Peter, and yet they blooming well have the vote, don't they?
It's a fair point. Pride rainbows have been taken off police cars after a court ruling. This is Northumbria Police telling officers and staff they cannot attend a Pride march in uniform this weekend, in a move that could set a precedent for other forces. Joe?
Absolutely correct. Why are these two things linked in any way, shape or form? As for wearing a uniform to a Pride march, again, I just think that's the wrong thing to do. The police are here to police. Yeah, everything else that goes on. I mean, if they want to turn up in their own clothes, that's fine.
And that would be fine, wouldn't it, Matthew?
LGBT plus officers and their allies should absolutely be able to march in their uniforms at Pride. And I can tell you that at Leicester Pride, which I'm really looking forward to in a few weeks, I shall be there with Amnesty International, who I know you're a big fan of, Peter.
Oh dear.
We won't have that argument again today. But you know, the officers are not. They're serving officers, but what I mean is it's when they're off.
They're off duty. They're not being paid to be there.
No.
Yes.
And so I don't think any problem with that. You know, I'm a former independent community chair of Leicestershire Police's LGBT plus independent advisory group. Oh, that's a mouthful. And I can tell you that I think this is important. It shows a signal to LGBT plus members of the community who, again, sorry folks, but we also have rights, that the police care about.
I don't think anybody's saying that you don't have
issues.
rights. I don't think anybody's saying that. I think they're simply saying that the police need to be totally impartial. This is a political cause. In some way, it's certainly advocating for rights. Therefore, they should be impartial in that.
But the fact is that there's LGBT plus members of the police service. So are they to? Well,
they're going to leave their opinions at the door when they police.
Well, and can I also say that the person who has apparently said this, who is apparently the LGBT plus community's lead for the National Police Chiefs Council, well, it doesn't sound as if she's very much of a lead for our communities.
Well, this is a High Court decision. Just a final word from Joe.
Well, we started off speaking about the fact that the livery on the police cars will no longer include Pride. And I think that is absolutely correct. I mean, I support your cause, of course I do. But I don't want to see it on my police cars
Joe,
or anything else.
In 20 seconds, it's very wet. Tell us a little bit more about whether it's going to continue to be wet.
Buckle up. Yeah, we had these lovely heat waves, didn't we? Temperatures topping 30 degrees Celsius. Although I have to say the overnights were getting very uncomfortable. Even this morning, 20 degrees Celsius, a tropical night where I lived. And there's lots of rain around. Some of that has been thundery. We're going to see more coming in from the southwest. That's going to
We're never happy though, are we?
Well, there's going to be plenty of rain this week, let's put it that way. Okay. And then August, things look like settling down again. So just hang on in there.
Looking forward to that. Thank you both very much, Joe Wheeler and Matthew Hulbert there on the debate desk. What do you make of what they've said about all those different issues? Let me know your thoughts. Pick up the phone, 0344 499 1000.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. It is fair to say Matthew Hulbert, who was with us a minute ago on the debate desk, has sparked quite a reaction. We got 22 voice notes in the last hour. Tech Up Dave is working through them, and we will play out as many of them as we can. Lots of tweets and all the rest of it as well. Loads to discuss, especially on migration. We'll be talking to an expert in a second. 22 of those. We'll play out as many of them as we can. Hundreds of asylum seekers living in tax-funded hotels, charged with crimes such as rape, robbery and GBH. The Bell Hotel in Essex as well, protest there. We're talking as well about one Afghan migrant caught up in this data breach who brought 18 members of his family, some of which may not even be blood relatives, with him. Should 16-year-olds have the vote? We'll talk about that as well. One person, Colin, says 12 and 14-year-olds can pay taxes, so why not them? Some people saying if you don't pay tax, you shouldn't have the vote. We'll talk to Tobias Elwood this hour as well about that data breach, and let me know your opinions on all of it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, and remember the main number does three things. You can send me a voice note if you want to. Tech Up Dave says no, but please do send them in. Voice notes of less than a minute, please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, and you can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Let me just give you a flavour of some of the tweets I'm getting. I'm a nurse, says Debbie, 43 years. Matthew needs to have a close look at his ideology. Just Me on Twitter says, Peter, just tell Matthew we don't want the immigrants. Ireland doesn't want them. We live in England. We don't want them. We don't give a fig about human rights. We just don't want people on our streets, towns or cities. End of. Anthony says Matthew can huff and puff, showing his displeasure at your questioning, Peter, but he doesn't show any empathy for his fellow countrymen. Another person says Matthew has no clue. We know nothing about the immigrants entering our country from a totally alien culture which has no interest in integrating or learning our language. The pull factor, free accommodation, phones, doctor, dentist apps, money, etc., etc. Another person on Twitter says, ask Matthew, are we not entitled to a better life? The illegal people coming here are not from war-torn countries. They're coming here for free houses, free money, and they hang around schools. Our women and children are frightened to go out. Where is their better life? And Vonnie says, Matthew is living on another planet. What about our human rights to not have our hard-earned taxes keeping these illegal migrants? Leslie says, sorry, but listening to Matthew, I'm surprised Lib Dems receive any votes. He is unbelievably naive. Howard says, you're a star as usual. Different views are important. Someone like Matt, the Lib Dem, just enraged me with his utter nonsense. And Colin says 12 and 14-year-olds pay taxes, so why should they not get the vote? And Nicola in Slough says, I live in the most multicultural town outside London. There are areas where English is not spoken. There are ghettoised areas. We've had slow immigration since the Romans. I also work somewhere, a care home, where the staff have come legally to this country and all speak good English. We also have 2 hotels with boat people on a high street that is now a no-go area because of them. And Sue says the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, springs to mind. Lots of opinions there. We're going to talk as well about the Afghan migrant bringing 22 relatives to the UK. Let's speak to Stephen Wolfe, who is the Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, you're very welcome to the programme. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, Peter. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Lots to discuss, including the data breach leading to one Afghan migrant bringing 22 relatives to the UK. Obviously, if we've put people like interpreters in danger, we do owe them some debt of gratitude, and perhaps they should be able to come to this country. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, look, I've listened to many people discuss this over the past few days, and I appreciate that there will be politicians who say on one side that we do owe them a debt of gratitude, but that numbers that were in the thousands, what's it, 1,200, is something that potentially we could accept. There are others on the other side, Peter, who take a much more hardline view that suggests that, well, these people were actually fighting for money. They were looking for an opportunity to a new government. They weren't really representing their own country at the time, and therefore, as collaborators, they should face the consequences of not being received anything at all in this country. Now, that may well be the case. My particular view on this is really in relation to the government's dishonesty about it. The fact that they tried to hide £7 billion as a cost, 24,000 people coming here, and that many of them, as you have indicated already, may well not have been actually actively helping this country, like those that you've suggested so far, but actually have slipped through the net simply trying to get a better life over here than at the cost to the taxpayer of this country. And that is unacceptable. Those politicians involved in it should not be politicians anymore. The fact that they feel like they can be acting like dictators and make a choice to have a super injunction rather than allowing the people of this country to know what the money is involved, why it's there, smacks to me as a level of arrogance that puts them at the very context of democracy and opposed to it rather than being for it.
I just wonder, Stephen, what you would have done had you been Defence Secretary and this huge leak had happened, because of course they wanted to protect life, including of MI6 officers in the first instance. Was some form of injunction not a reasonable idea at the start? I don't think it should have gone on for any longer than a month or two, but don't you think there was some action needed then?
I think first and foremost I would have looked at how we protected our own individuals, those in SIS, SBS, and others that may well have been there. And if that super injunction was needed just to protect them for that period of time, I'm like you, maybe we might have had something for a very short period of time. I'm not in that context. But in respect of the rest, no. I don't think we can do that anymore in this country because we've got too much in terms of the cost of illegal and legal migration. Only if we just take an example of this, Peter, 12 billion is the cost that's being estimated for the Afghans coming over in this potential scheme, with another 1 billion potentially in relation to the claims that lawyers are now going to make. We have a cost already of 12 billion a year in relation to asylum, and we know that it's around 10 billion for benefits. That's 28 billion pounds just in 3 areas. That means that an average family is paying around £800 a year in tax at 22%, just at 22%, £800 a year in tax to fund asylum and illegal immigration in this country. That's about a net income of about £4,000. Is that acceptable? Not at all. We should be starting to look after our own, and we start needing to reject this mass claim of people coming across the Channel and elsewhere, because it's causing a breakdown in society, as we're seeing in Essex, Northern Ireland, the actions that occurred after Southampton, what we've seen in Norfolk recently, but not just in this country. This impact has been had in Spain recently, mass riots going over there, not talked about by the mainstream media. The mass riots that are going across in Southern Ireland, we're beginning to see them in Italy, and I've just come back from Greece, where in 3 days on Crete alone, 2,500 came in each day, and they're going to start heading towards Britain.
It's very true, and we're storing up problems for the future. Do you think the government has any grip on this? We've talked about the one in, one out idea. Dame Chion Wara, the MP, a little bit earlier on saying there's no one solution to this, but a number of our viewers, listeners, saying, well, what about Trump in America? You know, he took one action, and actually that, to some degree, solved the problem on the southern border.
Well, unfortunately, I think that most of those people in power, whether they are the politicians, the civil servants, whether they are involved in the large corporations that are working with them, are exemplified by the Liberal Democrats, who is on your show a few moments ago. They just don't care. they don't see it as important. They don't see it as really a recognizable issue that should be dealt with. And as a consequence, their head in the sand approach is exactly what's causing the issues going forward. And the response of the the MP says there is no one solution to this. Actually, to an extent, one could argue yes. But actually, there are a particularly strong solutions, such as preventing people coming into the country in the first place, which would regard us to have an issue with France and the European Union, deporting and detaining, as the United States have done so. They've done so very, very rapidly, stopped over 250 to 300,000 contacts into the southern United States each month, almost stopping complete entry into the United States from the southern border. We could do the same, but I'm afraid I just don't believe that anyone in government or the civil service really cares enough and wants to be able to prevent this. And I don't think they see where the future goes, because in the words of Richard Tice, I believe, for Reform, when he said, "I won't be around when it happens," I think that's the same mentality of most of those in power.
I wonder, as a former MEP yourself, if I could ask you another question, Stephen, about votes at 16 and whether you think 16-year-olds should be given the vote.
I do not. I don't think it's an acceptable idea for younger people at that age who are just being able to formulate their ideas. They've been very much closely associated to that of schools, which, as we know, are predominantly more left-wing. And I think there is a real opportunity in society to turn around and say whether we take a line of where we see a level of maturity in thinking. I do believe that 18 was a reasonable period. I look at children, some of them are very smart, some are not. Some are engaged, others are not. And that arbitrary pick-off of 16, I just think is just a little bit too young. That's not to say that there aren't bright and smart children out there at the age of 16, I do believe that. But actually, as a whole, I think a sensible approach would have been 18 and maintain that. The only problem with this, Peter, is that the Labour Party will be seen to an attempt to gerrymander on the basis that they believe the vast majority of those who are 16 will vote for them because they have controls of the educational system where they can indoctrinate more. And I see that myself when I look at the curriculum of teaching of history in my own daughter's school. It has very little teaching of English history. It's more teaching of foreign nationalities.
I'd be very interested to see what happens when this does come in, because I think there might be a bit of a nasty surprise for the government as well. It could be very interesting to see. Stephen, thank you as always. That's Stephen Wolfe there, who's Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Max in Bristol says, surely now it is time to declare a state of national emergency as we're being overwhelmed by undocumented migrants, many of whom are potential terrorists and criminals. Add to the existential threat to UK citizens, we are being increasingly taxed to pay for their and their extended families' income, says Max. A similar point to what Stephen was saying there. David in Worcestershire says votes for 16-year-olds mean extra votes for their parents. In truth, they live at home and most will just vote as the parents tell them to. I believe the age should be increased to 21 when most people are more independent and more grown up. As your guest said, maybe you only get a vote if you're paying tax. Peter is in Croydon and has given me a ring about what's happening in Epping. And if you don't know, just let you know, the Bell Hotel there, it stood in the leafy village of Epping for decades. Dozens of migrants then moved in. Then there was a sex assault charge. We're not going to talk about that because we don't want to prejudice a trial, but there were angry demonstrations, some peaceful and some riots as well, or rioting behaviour. Peter, what do you make of this?
Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
I mean, last year when the riots occurred, we didn't have much of a context, but now with in Northern Ireland as well, there seems to be a bit of an organised thing going on. It's the same pattern. There's a pattern. You've got the peaceful protesters, then you've got the far right thugs coming in, and then you've got the counter protesters. And I just think it's organised. And it may be out there, but I think Starmer's got his grubby little hands over this. I really do.
You don't think he's organising this, do you?
He hasn't said a word.
Well, he certainly needs to say more, doesn't he, Peter? He needs to take control and show some leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. But he won't, because he's involved in it, Peter. He's bust. Well, there's rumours that the police bust in the Antifa from areas.
I don't think the police were involved with that, Peter. But what do you think Starmer should do?
Oh, well, I haven't got a clue. Well, Starmer does know what he's going to do anyway.
Well, it's a fair point. Thank you, Peter. That's Peter in Croydon there. Appreciate your thoughts there. Tony says, if paying tax qualifies you to vote, what happens if someone leaves a toddler a mansion in their will? The toddler will be liable for inheritance tax. Give 4-year-olds the vote, says Tony. One person says, what a breath of fresh air Stephen Wolfe is. Sue says, it's quite simple. Only adults should be able to vote. Yeah, but what time do you become an adult? Is it 18? I want a better life for myself, says Sean, preferably in Florida. Dan and Kent says, I give Matthew respect for coming on Talk, but he talks utter liberal hypocritical nonsense that will cripple the UK infrastructure and bankrupt the economy. Quite a few voice notes in regard to Matthew. Let's play one from Nick.
Morning, Peter. Nick Moore from Loughborough. I just heard Matthew Hulbert say that he's from Leicester, and he was celebrating the fact that it is one of the cities where the immigrants now outnumber the indigenous population, and he was celebrating that. Peter, I live 6 miles from Leicester, and I can tell you it has become a gutter of ghettos where there is no integration, and the place is it's a hellhole. It really is a hellhole. I don't quite know where Matthew gets his feelings, those sorts of feelings for Leicester. Leicester is a hellhole, along with many other cities that have gone down the same path. Have a good day, Peter.
Nick, thanks for your perspective. Let's hear from Paul.
Good morning, Peter. Paul up in Hartlepool. Your contributor Matthew said that these people, the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, have their human rights and the European Convention on Human Rights to fall back on, and it's important that we should adhere to them. When their human rights trump my human rights to walk safely with my wife around the streets of Hartlepool without fear of being assaulted or attacked by people we don't know their backgrounds or where they come from, there's something very, very wrong with the system. And as soon as we ditch their human rights and support our human rights, the better. Great show. Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Much appreciated. George has been in touch and says Matthew Hulbert made the point that the areas least affected by immigration voted for Brexit. It makes perfect sense. If you can preserve your way of life, then why wouldn't you? It's called learning from others' mistakes, says George. And Brian says, my father enrolled in the RAF as a 15-year-old in 1939. He went to war for you and for me to have free speech. Of course 16-year-olds should have a vote. My dad deserved a vote then, says Brian. Well, thank you to him. Thanks to everybody else who's been in touch. Plenty more of your opinions coming up. We'll also speak fairly soon to Tobias Elwood, the former Defence Select Committee chairman, about all of these issues in regard to the Afghan data leak. Loads more to come, and be sure to get your call in as well. 0344 499 1000.
Conservatives failed to do this in government, and that's why we're out of government, but Labour are far worse. So the Conservative Party, my party, has to really take this seriously and take a radical plan forward if we are to ever win back the confidence of the British people. But as you rightly said, Alex, the lawyers are already chasing this. I mean, potentially this is going to cost us huge sums of money because the lawyers will now take it to the very end and try to squeeze as much money out of the system as they can.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sean has been in touch on the asylum system with a voice note. This is what Sean has to say.
Hi Peter, Sean in Glasgow here. Could we not get a system what they do in Australia? It's a visa system to come in and try and sort it out that way. And for the legals, why is the British government allowing France, and we pay money to France, but France do not stop them? I think we need to get a deal sorted and get something sorted, or stop paying France any money. Cheers, Sean in Glasgow. Thanks, bye.
Sean, thank you so much for your opinion there. Let's hear what David has to say.
Good morning, Peter. Dave here. Your man Matthew, he and people like him are the problem. They think people from far-flung countries are better than the people living in Britain and deserve more human rights. Him and the activist judges are all the same. And Macron is a traitor. Don't believe him. Good show, mate.
Thank you, David. Much appreciated. A slightly shorter note from Jay.
Morning, Peter. Jason from Whitby. Matthew's a lovely, lovely lad. But boy, has he got some cotton wool between his ears. Joe's lovely. Cheers.
There we are, Jason. Thank you very much indeed. Just some breaking news from Los Angeles. At least 20 people have been injured after a vehicle has ploughed into a crowd in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Fire Department said there were multiple patients at the scene at Santa Monica Boulevard, with reports of an unknown vehicle hitting a crowd. That's at least 20 people have been injured after that vehicle ploughed into a crowd in Los Angeles. We'll bring you any updated lines on that. Of course, stay with us here on Talk. I want to talk about one of the stories we touched on briefly with Matthew and Joe on the debate desk a little bit earlier on. This is in regard to police officers going to pride parades in their uniforms. Nell has given us a ring from Norwich on this. Nell, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I'd like to say that I'm a veterinary surgeon. I've worked in posh places. I've worked as security guards in the roughest parts of the country. And I'd like to say that we are just there for people's animals, and I don't think that gentleman, with all due respect, would want to turn up at 3 a.m. with his dying dog to see one of my nurses displaying every sort of LGBTQ plus banner. I just think it's an outrage. His response was that some policemen are members of the LGBTQ plus community. Well, so is one of the vets I work with, but we don't show it. We show respect for what we are and for what our job is, and I find it really offensive that they can do that. We can't. Our governing body, the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, will not allow us to even join animal activist groups, anything to do with halal slaughter, or all these other things. We're not allowed because that's not our job to do that. And I don't get annoyed. I'm very placid, but I found him very, very annoying. Because it's just not what you're trained for. Do the job you're trained for.
Well, I agree with you, Nell, in that I've no problem with anybody's sexuality, whatever they want to be. That's up to them. The point is, if you're a police officer or a veterinary surgeon or whatever, you're meant to leave your opinions at the door and simply deal with the issue in front of you and treat everybody the same, not in regard, like it's very difficult sometimes not to treat people in terms of your opinions and so on, but you can't bring your views, your political views, into that veterinary theatre and dealing with the public, for example, because that's a totally inappropriate thing to do.
Yeah, and we're actually governed very tightly on what we're allowed to do, and I just think it's crazy that it's got to this stage. I absolutely, and I don't normally phone in and I don't comment because I'm very placid, but that has really annoyed me. You know, we as vets are there to serve the animals and the people, and I would love to speak to that man and ask him how he would feel if his dog was dying at 3 a.m. and I greeted him in rainbow-coloured hair and you know, operating gowns and stuff, and promoting and badges and things. You know, it's just not appropriate. He would want me for my skill set. So I'm sorry if I sound a bit annoyed.
No, it's fine. I mean, I imagine Matthew Hulbert would say, look, they're off duty. They're simply saying that there are gay, lesbian people in the police service. If they're not taking money from the public in order to do so, why shouldn't they be allowed to march in that parade?
Yeah, but I think there are certain professions where you just don't have the right to be provocative. You know, it's your personal right, but policemen are there, they're out in the public, people do recognise, I mean, you can tell who's a policeman. You know what I mean? They have a certain demeanour. And stuff, and you know, you've chosen that profession and you should stay completely neutral. I mean, I have rules in my consulting room. You don't abuse me. You might get angry and upset, that's different, but you don't abuse me and you don't come in with your top off, and that applies to men.
Okay.
You know,
yes, and women too, I would imagine.
Yes.
Nell, I'm sure this is a question a lot of people ask you, and sorry if it's an unfair question, but I'm a great animal lover, as you may know. I've got a book about animals coming out, and my cat is at the centre of my world. I mean, you see the lives of many animals, and I'm sure that's a really, really important part of your job and gives you a lot of satisfaction. It must be really, really tough when things don't go as you want them to, and when you have to put animals down. Is that a really tough thing to deal with?
Well, that's a question that I get asked all the time, and a lot of people say, oh my God, I couldn't do that job. And I'll answer it quite simply and truthfully. It is the most difficult part of the job in terms of concern about it going right. You ask any veterinary surgeon, you worry, is it going to go wrong, in the sense you miss a vein or something happens. It's the most litigated and the most complained about because veins collapse. But, and this is the truth, to me it is an honour to look in that animal's eyes and say it's okay to go.
Yes, 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 yes.
And that to me is a huge honour to be able to do that. And I always explain to the owners, stay really calm, really quiet, because the animal will pick up from you and will feel it's not allowed to go because it cares for you. So it's an honour to do the job, but when you see the list on your list of appointments, it does bring anxiety, because old animals, you know, they have collapsed veins, they have all kinds of things. So yes, I get what you're saying. It is hard, but it's an honour.
Okay. Really interesting perspective, Nell. Thank you, and thanks for ringing in. I appreciate that. That's Nell in Norwich there. Mark's in Lincolnshire. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What point would you like to make this morning?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi there.
Hi there. Yeah, I was actually kind of a little bit off topic, really, but kind of relates to our situation as well, I think. And that is something that happened quite recently in Auckland, New Zealand, 21st of June, I think it was. And that was the Maori people basically doing what I can only really describe as probably the most impassioned haka that I've seen them do.
So this is the ceremonial dance that they do in New Zealand, yeah? The Maori people, yeah.
Like, I believe it's related to like a war dance, kind of thing.
Yeah. I've seen it done myself in New Zealand. It's a very impressive thing.
It certainly is, Peter. I think, but this was quite a special one in respect of what it was against was actually what they considered to be foreign religions, trying to essentially eradicate them as a people. So it seemed primarily aimed at Islam. It did involve a particular sect of Hinduism as well. And in this, they were taking flags of these, symbols of these other religions and basically tearing them up, spearing them, which is why I said it was quite an impassioned one. I've never seen them actually go that far with something. And this is something, you know, when you look into it a bit deeper, this is something to do with how they found that people have been imported into their communities. And, you know, in places, for example, you know, small areas where you might have, they may end up with 15, 20, 30 Muslims, for example, and all of a sudden there's a mosque appearing. And they're
so interesting. And was this the Maori people themselves who are voicing this objection?
Yes.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yet, of course, they've had so many Christians who've been there for many hundreds of years in New Zealand as well.
Well, yes, but the thing is that people don't seem to understand as well, Peter. The Maoris actually converted to Christianity about 200 years ago. They accepted Christianity into their culture, essentially.
Okay.
For the same reason that we did. And when you watch the video of the event, you know, there's a speaker there, that's a Maori guy that's talking, you know, on a microphone, and as he's describing it, you know, and he's quite right in what he's saying, as far as I'm concerned, at least. Christianity was accepted into the Maori culture because it only really seeks to improve a culture. It doesn't seek to eradicate. So in other words, it will look at removing things like, you know, eating each other or, you know, murdering the wife of, you know, a dead man, for example, you know, like burning them alive, which is something that happened in some African tribes back in the day, you know, a few hundred years ago. That's kind of what Christianity tends to do, whereas things like Islam, this particular sect of Hinduism, which I think is a Hori sect, they seek to basically have a one-world religion. So,
well, it's really interesting the Maori people are standing up against that, and you can see that even halfway around the world, an ancient culture very annoyed and worried about the creep of other religions as well, and that's something that certainly many people in this country are concerned about too, Mark.
Absolutely. I mean, it's quite interesting because there is, I believe, some march in September from the much maligned Tommy Robinson's thing that he does. You know, I think they kind of refer to it as the Patriots March. And actually, the really interesting thing is this particular, a smaller group of these same Maori are actually coming to that event because they see it as, they kind of see the UK, England, as kind of, I don't know, kind of maybe some kind of motherland, fatherland or something. I really don't know quite how they see us. But they kind of want to help us as well because they see exactly what's going on in this country and the fall of Christianity, or what they perceive to be the fall of Christianity, and the way that it's being abused. And, you know, it's really heartening to see them doing this, you know, but I also kind of feel for them as well. But if I could end on one thing as well, you know, Peter.
Sure.
Something that you talk about, you know, fairly regular, and that's the Israel situation. Now, I don't know whether you're aware, because it doesn't really make the mainstream news. You know, there's obviously the issues that are ongoing in Syria.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later in the programme, actually.
Yeah, well, there's something that isn't really mentioned, and that is a lot of the actions that the IDF have been taking in Syria actually relate to helping basically the Christians, and I really can't think of the Druze, D-R-U-Z-E, yeah, the Druze.
Yeah.
They kind of put out a call for help from the Israelis.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that all later on. We'll get a lot more detail on that, Mark. Thanks for your call. That was Mark in Lincolnshire there. We will talk much more about that a bit later on in the programme. We're going to talk to the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, in a second about this data leak, about all the different things that are coming from that, including the impact on migration. Lots of people getting in touch, including about Nell. Susan says, what a lot of sense Nell spoke. What a lady with a lot of compassion. She was so right on everything she said. Sarah in North Yorkshire says, what a fantastic call from Nell, the veterinary surgeon. Couldn't agree more. And what she said about when she has to put animals to sleep was just lovely. As an owner of cats and dogs, this is the hardest and most difficult part when we have to let them go, but she put that so well. She sounds like a great vet. Lots more to come here on Talk, and make sure to get your opinion on the air. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Tobias Ellwood joins us now. He's the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, also a former minister in the Ministry of Defence. Tobias, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lots about this data leak, in fact more coming today about an Afghan migrant bringing 22 relatives to the UK. I think I'm probably quite unpopular amongst the journalistic community for many reasons, but specifically because I think Ben Wallace, who was then Defence Secretary, was probably right to injunct this in the first place. What do you think should have happened, and what do you make of the outworkings of it and the big revelations this week?
Yes, I would agree with you. This was a gargantuan cock-up, and it led to a lot of other decisions made, which some of them I think were flawed as well. The immediate reaction by the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, to issue a super injunction was necessary, simply because lives were in danger. What the SF were trying to do was reach out to individuals that may be at risk because the Taliban might be seeking reprisals. And quite rightly, we had a duty of care. But huge questions. Why were the SF dealing with a gargantuan database, which included random Afghans who had no connection with the international community, or with NATO, with Britain, but simply seeking to get out of the country, understandably. Those people were mixed in, thousands of them, with judges, with translators, with other supporters of our military operation. So, of course, there are detailed questions, and I welcome the current Defence Select Committee's announcement of an inquiry so they can look into this. If I may, though, it has exposed something slightly larger here, which I hope perhaps you might give me a second just to expand on. Go ahead. Which is our ability to deal with failure. There's a call for a public scout saying, who's at fault, who was actually wrong. But I would argue that it actually, we don't handle failure well. It's shone a light on our culture in dealing with and responding to human error. Errors will be made in a fast-moving, dangerous environment, especially when conducting tasks such as this.
To me, the error was the release of the data. The person who put that in the public domain, and whatever reasons they had for that need to be looked into, or whatever happened, whether it was cock-up, conspiracy, whatever that is, that to me is the fundamental problem, and everything flows from that. I'm not sure that the injunction should have lasted as long as it did. That was a decision the courts made. I'm not sure that successive Ministry of Defence ministers should have applied for more injunctions as that went on. But what I do think is that the original injunction was probably the right idea to save lives. In terms of what should happen now, and in terms of how these people should be treated, with some news today from the Telegraph about one migrant bringing 22 relatives to the UK. I mean, that's not right, is it, Tobias?
No, it's not. As you say, I mean, there are too many questions, but I just need to stress this point, that when things go wrong, there is an instinct in government, and you raise these other questions, and in Whitehall departments, and by the individuals, not to confront the failure when it happens, but to cover it up, to deflect, for fear of embarrassment, for fear of that exposure. That takes precedence over institutional learning. So you had this initial mistake that you just mentioned, the release of this list. And then what happened is further mistakes were then made simply to continue the cover-up. And that's my point, is that we're not particularly good at recognizing where this actually goes. And it was the same with the Horizon Post Office scandal, and indeed the Windrush debacle as well. Early warnings were ignored, problems denied, internal whistleblowers sidelined, and the culture of bureaucratic inertia led to this continued then cover-up, because you don't want to expose the scale of the failure. And that means that this erodes public trust. So I just stress this point here, that we need a better approach to deal with the fact that rather than calling for a scalp, there needs to be a better approach to then say, when something happens, and it will do, human errors are part of the process, particularly in a military environment, and they lead to something at scale as this, is that the hand goes up straight away. There is a delay between when this error was made and when it was finally understood and exposed. And that, again, as I say, is the culture and how the MOD operates. And
surely if there is a scalp, if there is one or more people who are found to be culpable for this, that's the inevitable consequence of some accountability here. But I also wonder how you change a culture in terms of saying, well, actually, you should bring these things forward, and and whistleblowers, for example, should have their concerns acted upon.
Okay, let me give an example, and this is where I would strongly recommend any committee that's doing a review in this is look at what the RAF do. They promote something called just culture, a progressive, structured approach to managing human error. Error is not viewed as a personal failure, but it is an inevitable feature of operating in a complex, high-pressure environment. Personnel are encouraged to report mistakes straight away, not to cover it up, not to hide it, not to gloss over, not to walk away. They then learn collectively. They build resilience through shared insight. That did not happen here. The individual here, we don't know. We'll find out whether they panicked, whether they held on to it, or what. And then consequently, others, because of that culture, decide also to close it down and then hide it. The trust and openness was not prioritized, and instead, defaulting to punishment. What the RAF does is promote reporting, promoting analysis, institutional learning. That's where we absolutely need to get to, recognizing that rapid adaptation is essential. Look at Ukraine. They're making mistakes all the time, but there's not great big witch hunts because of this. The hand goes up straight away. They recognize the problem and they act on it. Half the issues, the questions you're now raising, are what happened after the actual list came out, furthering, compounding the scale of the problem that we're now facing.
Okay, Tobias, wise words there. Tobias Elwood, former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, former Defence Minister at the MOD as well. What about you think about that? 0344 499 1000. Penny is in Essex and says, we've been to Australia lots of times, and if we were young enough, we'd live there. This country is doomed. No getting back to the once great country we once were. And Mary in County Down said, the vet you had on there spoke with great compassion about having to put animals to sleep. Owners who refuse to stay with their pets in their final moments are cowards. If they can't stop crying hysterically, then they should obviously stay away. But I often hear people saying they just don't like being around death. Would they leave their child, parent or partner to die without them? Pets are family and should be honoured at the moment of death. On the subject of 16-year-old votes, Kevin says the SNP gave 16-year-olds the vote in 2014, hoping they'd all support the independence vote. That didn't work out for them. The argument they'll all vote for left-wing parties is a red herring. Kevin, I agree with you. And on the weather as well, Shane says from Sydney, the weather tonight in Sydney is a cold winter's night, 9 degrees. Absolutely love the show, mate, says Shane in Sydney. Shane, always good to hear from you, and thank you, very loyal viewer there in Australia. Lots more to come, including Lucy Beresford, the psychotherapist's analysis of the CEO caught cheating at a Coldplay concert. Lots to come in terms of your opinions as well. We'll get through some of those voice notes as well. Keep sending them in. 0344 499 1000.
But if we are able to expand that scheme so that we can send everyone who comes over back, then it won't be worth their trying to come across. And therefore, there will be no return.
No, but it's not. But that's not the deal. The deal is not let's send them all back and we don't get anything in return. The deal is if we send 50 back, we get 50 coming the other way.
Yes, the deal is a pilot scheme.
How is that? Well, no, it's a pilot scheme. 2, you've said if quite a few times. 3, it's going to cost us a lot more money.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We've had quite a lot of reaction to the interview with Dame Chion-Wara a little bit earlier on. Let's just give you a flavour of that from Ross.
Good morning. We just had a guest on there. We're absolutely sick of hearing this smash the gangs, honestly. That's all we ever hear, smash the gangs. We're gonna stop the boats, smash the gangs. That's all we ever hear. Nothing changes month after month, year after year. The numbers go up.
Kitty's been in touch about that interview too.
Good morning, Peter and team. Kitty from Kent here. So your first Labour MP guest, she epitomises A, why the honours system is completely broken. Why is she a dame? She doesn't deserve to be a dame. And secondly, she epitomises the rot within our public sector. The go slow, nothing can be done quickly, we need new systems. They spend billions of our money on new systems, and then they replace those systems. I'm there, I see it. It's waste and lack of accountability, no personal responsibility, but they're on the public purse and they literally don't care. Labour don't care about our country is going down the drain. I feel gutted about it. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Kitty. Let's hear from Nick.
Baroness Chi is gaslighting, as usual, from politicians. Complex issue? No, very simple. Turn the boats round. Poor factors? They've had a year to stop it if they intended to. Smash the gangs? Give over.
Nick, thank you for your thoughts there. It's Dame Chi, but yes, certainly she is someone who hasn't been hugely popular. I'm not hugely popular with Richard in Leicester. He says, as per usual, Peter, another one of your mates on to justify the Afghanistan corruption. Keep the lies going, Peter. You're very good at your cushy job. Have a great day, says Richard. Tobias Elwood, I'm not sure he was justifying any corruption there by any stretch of the imagination. I do think the original injunction was absolutely reasonable, but one more message actually before we go to your next item on that from Ben in Belfast, who says, with the figure of 22 relatives, it might seem high. We need to understand that many Afghans live in larger family groups. For example, 2 brothers sharing a compound with wives, children, grandparents and unmarried siblings, etc. It wouldn't be unusual for family groups to be in the high teens or 20s. It's not the British way, but it is the Afghan way. Leaving family members behind would expose them to persecution by the Taliban. Applying outrage to the numbers admitted after this data breach is understandable, but the reality is very complex. Right then, let's talk about the, it says on my screen here, Lucy Beresford is with us, the psychotherapist. Lucy, you're very welcome to the programme.
Hello, good to be here.
Lucy, it says on my screen, CEO caught cheating with Lucy Beresford.
Right. I think, yes, you heard it here first.
I think a comma probably might have been useful there. CEO caught cheating, comma, with Lucy Beresford. Not with Lucy Beresford, it must be said. But this particular piece of footage of this chief executive at a Coldplay concert, and it went viral, loads of people talking about it. Lucy, what is your take on this? Because lots of people are certainly discussing the head of HR and the CEO in an embrace there. They tried to turn their backs and get out of the footage, but of course thousands, millions of people worldwide have now seen it. Lots of parodies, lots of people poking fun at it and so on, but of course there is a family behind all this.
It's a very multi-layered story, and you're right, there is a workplace dimension to it. There are plenty of firms around the world that have very strict rules about whether you can have a relationship with a fellow colleague, and this appears to have flouted that. If what we have been led to believe has taken place. But so there will be colleagues who may be very disappointed in this news, and there may be ramifications within the firm. But on a wider note, there are families now who are having to grapple with the revelation potentially of betrayal, and that completely upends your world.
And global humiliation as well.
There will always be a sense of humiliation, actually. The idea that perhaps you didn't know that your partner was cheating on you, or the manner of its revelation, there will often be, for the betrayed, that sense of, how did I not spot this? How did I not see it coming? Did I miss the signs? Did I not ask the right questions? And that level of shame can occur irrespective of how the betrayal might be revealed. But for sure, this one is on a global stage. You've even had one of the world's biggest music acts kind of drawing attention to the fact that possibly there was an affair going on. So the fact that here on a TV station in the UK we're talking about something that happened in another country, it's a very big story, but it's big because it's so personal. There was some research that came out from YouGov, the polling company. They worked with Ashley Madison, the married dating website people. They asked about 14,000 people, how many people really are having an affair, and the number was 1 in 4. So this is a story that resonates for a lot of people. You don't have to be a fan of Coldplay. You don't have to know which company this is about. You hear about an affair and it resonates on a human level.
It's interesting that Andy Barron, who is, of course, the chief executive of the company Astronomer, they have released a statement saying, Astronomer is committed to the values and culture that have guided us since our founding. Our leaders are expected to set the standard in both conduct and accountability. The board of directors has initiated a formal investigation into this matter, and we will have additional details to share very shortly. The point is, as well, these are not just two consenting adults having an affair, no matter how horrible and how much betrayal that might involve for their two families. They're working together. They're also people at a very high level. I'm not being puritanical about this, and I'm not saying that, here but for the grace of God go I, is what I would say. But nonetheless, as a leader of an organisation, and certainly a leader of human resources, and almost every single person I've ever met who works in human resources has a sliver of ice in their heart, there will be people who will find this funny and will see the two very high-ranking, highly paid people falling off their perch of of both presumably money, but also reputation.
Well, I think the idea of reputation is really important, which is why the company presumably has put out this statement, because matters of the heart clash with matters of trust. And when you have a situation like infidelity, absolutely, the bottom line about it is that trust has been broken. And in relationships, I've given a TED talk about this, which is entitled Infidelity, to Stay or to Go, which explores whether relationships can survive that breach of trust. But when you're talking at a corporate level, and not just, let's say this was a quoted company and there were shareholders involved. Let's say there is a board that needs to meet. Let's say there are other colleagues who want to know, can I trust this person? Are they trustworthy? There is often that question mark about whether your personal behaviour it gives you an indication of what your professional life is like.
Well, I wonder, just on that note, talking about major brands, Ryanair and Aldi, they've used the kiss cam scandal as a marketing tool on social media. They're profiting from humiliation and family pain, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's pretty disgraceful, actually, because it isn't funny. Behind that moment that is captured on the kiss cam, which did cause amusement, and Chris Martin from Coldplay even says, either that couple is very shy or they're having an affair. There was something about the body language which immediately suggested something to a complete stranger, which the rest of us have seen. But the idea that you would then make a joke about it when there are now grieving partners, perhaps really distressed children who don't know what the future holds, people in the employment who don't know what the relationships will be like, what the fallout will be within the company. Will people lose their jobs? Will people be put on leave? Will secrets get revealed? It's a really big story, and it's a really big story because it is so human. The heart, you cannot predict who the heart will fall in love with, and sometimes it is the person that maybe you're not meant to be in love with.
Lucy, thank you. You're going to join us in the studio tomorrow, I know, in the debate desk. Looking forward to that. That's Lucy Beresford there, who is a psychotherapist, and thank you to her for her opinions on all of that. Lots of people getting in touch on all the issues we're talking about today, including 16 and 17-year-olds getting the vote. No, 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 says Nicola in Norfolk. By all means, prepare them for becoming a voter at 18 by having mock elections in schools and educating them on the democratic system in an unbiased manner, but giving them the vote when they really don't have a clue about the impact their vote will have on the economy, the community, health, education, defence, etc. is ludicrous, says Nicola. My question to you, I suppose, Nicola, I agree with what you said, but there are lots of people who have the vote who may not know those things either, who may vote for, you know, there are people who voted for Keir Starmer because they like his hair. Paul in Fulham, London says they're not 5-star hotels. Wow, are they 3-star? It must be devastating for them. And John in Lincolnshire says that Labour MP gaslit us this morning, says John. Lots more coming. Get your thoughts in, and we'll be talking about the Druze in Syria as well. A much ignored story.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. Yeah. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
Well, a very very good afternoon. This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. There's so much of the media that is ignoring what is happening in Syria, because what happened when Assad went is that so much of the West said everything's fine, Assad's gone, Bashar al-Assad, horrible person. Jalani, oh, this guy who's replacing him, he's lovely, he's wonderful. Well, guess what? There are lots of different communities being persecuted by Jalani. We'll talk about that. We'll get the full facts of that from one of my favourite commentators and journalists, Jonathan Sacerdoti, is coming up in a second. We'll take your views on migration as well. Lots to discuss in regard to Afghan migrants coming here, with some with up to 22 family members. Lots of people getting in touch about votes at 16 as well. And we'll talk about the BBC ruling out anti-Semitism awareness training after a string of scandals. As always, I want to make sure you get your voice on the air between now and 1 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number in order to do that. You can give me a phone call, you can send me a voice note, you can send me a WhatsApp text message on that number, you can give me a ring. As I say, you can also send me a text on 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter, and remember that main number 0344 499 1000 does those three things. You can send me a voice note, you can send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock, and indeed tomorrow between 10 and 1 o'clock. We've had it confirmed that Steve Reid, the Environment Secretary, is going to be with us, as is the Shadow Housing Secretary, Kevin Hollingreg. All of that coming up tomorrow between 10 and 1, and plenty coming up today between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, Jonathan Sacerdoti, the journalist, is with me now. And Jonathan, it's great to have you on this afternoon. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good to be with you, Peter.
One thing that worries me is a lot of the language around what's happening in Syria at the moment. And there was this sort of collective decision by a lot of the Western media, a lot of the mainstream outlets that, oh, Bashar al-Assad, bad. That was correct. He then was overthrown. Good. Then he was replaced by someone called Jalani. Now, Jalani is not a nice person. He's an Islamist and he's persecuting people. I just wonder how what is happening now in terms of the Druze community is being framed by a lot of people as intercommunal violence, rival factions. Is this actually an attempted ethnic cleansing of the Druze by Jalani's Syrian government? And perhaps you could just illustrate the issue for us. There'll be a lot of viewers and listeners who won't have been told the full story here. Maybe you can help us today, Jonathan.
Sure. Well, over the last few days, southern Syria's seen a big escalation in violence, and that's involved Syrian government forces, it's involved local Druze militias, and I'll explain a bit more about the Druze in a moment, and even the Israelis. And those developments have centred on the city of Sueda, which is in southern Syria, and the surrounding areas around there. And that's home to much of Syria's Druze population. It's a small minority there. And they have been loyal to, traditionally, the Druze are loyal to wherever they live. So the Druze that live in Israel are very loyal to the Israeli state. The Druze that live in Syria tried over the years to sort of keep out of the various tensions between the different groups there. But at the moment, what we're seeing is a lot of the Arab clans, the Bedouin Arabs in Syria, attacking the Druze communities there quite brutally. Everything from trying to humiliate people, cutting off their moustaches in public, which is a sort of sign of great disgrace to them, to killing them, massacres. We saw a hospital in Sueda taken over, people slaughtered in that hospital. And then, as you say, the whole country is in some form of turmoil after the fall of Assad. And the new ruler there has not really been protecting the minority groups like the Druze. Ahmed Hussein al-Shara, who's also known by his nom de guerre Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, which is after the Golan Heights, Jilani meaning like Golan in Hebrew, which is the area that Israel has that was once disputed as southern Syria and now not recognized by all, but recognized by President Trump during his first time in office as Israeli territory. So far, so complicated. But the basic results of the last few days has been that there has been an enormous number of fatalities. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the number of fatalities in the armed clashes and bombardments, extrajudicial killings, all of the different methods of death over the last few days since July the 13th is around 718. And of those, 226 people are from Sueda, including 80 civilians, and among those 4 children and 4 women. Obviously, these numbers will be somewhat inaccurate because it's very hard to get precise facts. And indeed, in terms of everything going on there, there's a lot of rumour, a lot of videos, a lot of reports. It's always hard to keep tabs exactly on what's happening.
Tell us about Israel's role in this and what is motivating their intervention. It's not just sympathy for the Druze, of course. There's strategic interests at play here too.
Yeah, so you could perhaps categorize Israel's involvement in two ways. One is that Israel is very proud of its Druze minority. The Druze in Israel are very protective of the country that they live in. They take full part in life in Israel. They serve in elite units quite often. They take part in public life. They are a very well integrated non-Jewish minority population in Israel. And it's worth mentioning that the Druze are a separate religion. It sounds a bit like Jews, but it's got nothing to do with Judaism. Actually, it's more related to Islam, but it's a branch off of that as well. And it combines various different schools of thought. It's not really Islamic. And they believe in reincarnation, which some Druze will tell you is one of the reasons for their fierce battle stance, that they believe that they will come back in another life after death. They're also fiercely loyal, as I said, to one another, despite living in different areas of the Levant. And they are very loyal to the country they live in. So Israel likes to protect them back wherever they are, including in Syria. But the more pragmatic reason that Israel's got involved is that the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu explained that they will not tolerate military presence in southern Syria. Since the fall of Assad, Israel did a lot to eliminate much of the threat from the military in Syria with blitz strikes that really took out an awful lot of their capability. Since then, Israel has been adamant it will not allow southern Syria to be militarized because that could be a big threat to Israel. And so they said that they identified this problem in the south of Syria, that there was a build-up or there were presences of troops, and so they weren't tolerating that. But at the same time, they were also supporting and defending the Druze minority in southern Syria. We saw an extraordinary thing, actually, when this all started a few days ago, of Israeli Druze civilians even storming the border in the north of Israel to break into Syria. They were planning on foot to go and fight in Sweda to defend other Druze there. So you can see that these loyalties are very fierce and cross borders.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about what's been happening in Gaza today. There are reports that 32 people have been killed and 100 people injured. They've come from the Hamas terrorist-run health ministry, so we need to be sceptical about those figures. But clearly there are serious problems with the distribution of aid.
Yes, the distribution of aid in Gaza has been an ongoing problem, and it depends again on who you ask, what you think about it. So the American-run aid distribution system there has been very unpopular with others, including the Hamas-run authorities in Gaza, because the Americans say their aim is to remove the aid from Hamas, remove the control of that aid, and indeed the aid itself. Previously, you would see UN bodies and others bringing in aid and distributing it, and that was problematic because Hamas were able to hijack much of the aid and then actually sell it and control it as they wished. So they could give it to who they want, i.e. their own people, their own fighters. They could withhold it from others, and they could also make a lot of money out of it, which helps them to continue their effort against the IDF there. So the aim was to remove that control, and this US-backed body was set up to do that. It has encountered some problems because Hamas aren't giving up control easily. And so when we hear about deaths like these, of course it is terribly tragic if people in Gaza are dying, especially if they're just simply trying to get aid, civilians trying to get aid. We obviously, as you've said there, those figures are often given out by Hamas-run organizations. Quite often they're completely made up, quite often they're exaggerated, or the details of who did the killing are often false, because Hamas have been seen, according to the US-backed aid facilities, to have been targeting civilians trying to get aid from them and then blaming it on the US. So it's all, again, very complicated. It's very difficult to know exactly what is happening, but in trying to come up with our evaluations, it is worth considering whose authority we believe and who is trustworthy. Is it the terrorist jihadists of Hamas, who are well known to lie and manipulate their own population, indeed sacrifice their own population for information war gains? Or is it the US and Israel, who have a slightly more aligned track record with the likes of ours in democratic UK? Obviously not perfect either, but I'm inclined personally to try to believe the more evidence-based explanations that tend to be given out on that side of things.
I'm always interested in journalists who wouldn't trust Wikipedia but trust a bunch of terrorists when they tell them stuff. I wonder with Syria and Israel, actually David Swanley has been in touch and says regarding Syria and the pledge in March to give 160 million in recovery aid from this country, will David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, now review that pledge? Should he? Will he even mention this or ignore it? Says Dave. And also, just in regard to the hopes of a ceasefire between Syria and Israel, I wonder what you make of that.
Yeah, well, you know, it was just 2 weeks ago that we saw David Lammy shaking hands with al-Shara and declaring that the UK was resuming its diplomatic relations with Syria under him. That's all looking perhaps a little less sensible today than it might have done, though it didn't look very sensible back then to many people as well. The Foreign Secretary actually visited Syria, the first visit there by a UK minister in 14 years, and renewed those diplomatic relationships. Now, it's worth saying as well that this is basically a jihadist in a suit. Before, we recognised him as a terrorist, and then the West rushed to try and recognise him as the authority, as the new leader of the country, and indeed to try and hope and support his efforts to bring some form of balance and normality back there. We don't always get to choose who is going to run different countries, especially when there is the downfall of one regime and a really brutal and horrible and hated regime. Often they're replaced by someone else just as bad or not quite as bad or worse. And I think there was a tendency in the West to hope that with the right encouragement, even though he wouldn't be perfect, he might provide some form of stability going forwards. I think that's looking less likely at the moment. And indeed, in terms of a ceasefire, there was this ceasefire announced last night, involvement of the US and Turkey as well. I don't know if it will hold. I don't think it is particularly holding, but it's early days, so we'll try and see if there can be some control of the fighting that's going on in southern Syria, especially in Sweda, because the Druze population there truly don't deserve the slaughter and massacres that are going on.
Just finally, Jonathan, before you go, Trump has been saying that there might be hope for the hostages. We know that 50 of them are still in Gaza, taken by Hamas terrorists on the 7th of October. I actually spoke to two hostages taken on the 7th of October, Aviva and Keith Siegel, who were in London this week. We played that interview out yesterday. We're going to play it again tomorrow, actually, on my programme. It's on my Twitter as well at the moment, and on the Twitter of @talkTV. I just wonder what you make of Trump's comments, and are we any closer to getting the 50 hostages back? 20 of them, we think, are alive.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation for those families, indeed for the whole of Israel, for anyone who cares about those hostages who are still being kept in horrific conditions. And as you've said, 20 odd alive, but that means quite a lot who are dead, tortured, starved, killed in a number of ways by the Palestinian terrorists. So it is a hope that they can be released. Of course, Israel is keen to get them released. It's keen to end the war as well, which is grinding on. And I think most of Israeli society would like to finish it. But the devil is in the detail. And when you ask Israelis how they would like to finish it, what they would like to see happen, then you start to get different answers. And the question is whether or not a ceasefire can be reached at any cost. That is to say, leaving Hamas in power, leaving them with the ability to rebuild, withdrawing Israeli troops from areas that are strategically very important in the Gaza Strip, because in the past they've been used to smuggle in weapons or to build up Hamas abilities, for example, making more tunnels and the like. So all of those details are what will matter. The rumours have been of a potential 60-day ceasefire during which negotiations would start to take place as hostages are released, and those negotiations would be to a potential end of the war with conditions like taking out all of the Hamas leadership that's left and exiling them elsewhere, things like that, and then negotiations over which parts of the Gaza Strip Israel will remain in as a military force in order to defend itself from any future attacks and also to stop weapons smuggling and those sorts of things going on. It's all still unknown to us, because really the best negotiations for ceasefires take place in secret. And so what we do here is the odd leak or rumour, but often we don't really know what's going on, because that would ruin negotiations if we did. So that's the situation as it is right now.
Sometimes these things are best done in private and get the best results. Jonathan, thank you as always. Jonathan Sacerdudi there giving us his commentary, and it's really important, I think, to talk about these important global events, especially when we're not getting the full story from so many parts of the media. Just speaking of global events, in Los Angeles, up to 5 people are in critical condition. Just a bit of an update on that story. This is after a vehicle reported to have ploughed into a crowd. Up to 5 people in critical condition. Los Angeles Fire Department says there are at least 20 injuries after the incident on Santa Monica Boulevard, close to Hollywood. Between 4 and 5 people are said to be in critical condition, 8 to 10 in a serious condition, and 10 to 15 in a fair condition. If there are any developments in that story, of course we'll bring it to you between now and 1 o'clock. Lots of your opinions coming up in just a second. Quite a few on migration, including Ray in Liverpool, who says, how many friendly countries are illegal migrants passing through to get to the UK? The left never seem to talk about this. I don't think international law says they can pick and choose in which country they claim asylum. Well, Ray, you're right, they're meant to claim asylum in the first country they come to. Jane says the public are fed up with everyone in Westminster. There should be no recess. The country is in a national emergency. It's got worse since last July. Shame on them. On votes of 16, Penny in Essex says, hi Peter, my goodness, giving 16-year-olds the vote is madness. There's some who have no idea about Israel or Palestine, and from what I've seen are only interested in social media, TikTok and taking selfies. Then you have the doom goblin, Greta Thunberg. Moronic. Labour will give the 16-year-olds something they really want before the next election to get their votes, and then take it away. They really think they're total idiots. We know all their ruses, says Penny. On the couple who were exposed as having an affair by the camera at the Coldplay concert, Peter says if they had acted normally and waved like a couple, this wouldn't have got the attention that it's got. And Craig has said, Peter, I'm sending you a picture of my cat Momo to cheer you up. It is a beautiful picture of a white cat with some black and sort of tan spots there as well. Really beautiful cat there. And Tech Up Dave has very kindly printed out a picture of Momo. We don't have Cat of the Week anymore, but Tech Up Dave nonetheless handing me this picture, and I will show you Momo. If you're watching on the screen, you can see that Momo is a very beautiful cat, so thank you for that. Little informal Cat of the Week. I think we can christen Momo Cat of the Week this week. Lots more to come with your opinions next here on Talk.
But it will take a catastrophic event, I fear, to get people to agree to move it to Hyde Park. And you're right. And you listed some of the additional features that could be implemented in the park, including public lavatories. But you're right. I mean, the clear up. I've already quoted the policing costs, but the actual cost of the event to individuals, homeowners, businesses is probably another several £1 million.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's hear a few more voice notes. There's been plenty of reaction to Matthew Hulbert, who was on earlier on. This one from Mark.
Hi, Peter. Mark from Manchester. I just heard your guest saying that everybody are entitled to human rights. Well, what about all the poor girls what are getting raped and sexually assaulted? Are they not entitled to human rights? Or are they too young for human rights? They'll be old enough to vote, though, in a couple of years.
Thank you, Mark. Steve has been in touch as well.
Peter, how the hell can you have that prat Matthew on your programme? He speaks absolute drivel. What do you mean? Oh, that's a good thing that people don't speak English in the schools. This is England. England, not Pakistan, not Afghanistan, England. Do you think if I went to live in Pakistan, they would have, oh, I'm sorry, you can't speak Pakistani. So I tell you what, we'll provide an interpreter. No, rubbish. I'd have to learn the language, and so I should. The same would go if I went to Spain. They don't provide interpreters for if you get ill when you're on holiday or whatever, and you need to go to hospital. Wake up, man. You're what's wrong with this bloody country. It's an absolute disgrace with you lot in charge.
Steve, thanks for your thoughts. I think you synthesised quite a lot of what quite a few people think about Matthew. I like having Matthew on because he makes me remember why I believe what I believe. I disagree with him on basically everything, and I mean, he, in fairness, takes the challenge. I don't think his arguments really stacked up today. I think a lot of people will agree with that, but certainly everybody has their say. We are the home of free speech and the home of common sense. Let's hear some more common sense from Kelvin.
Morning, Peter. That left-wing Matthew idiot winds me up. How can you make people more welcome? They come here now and they get free everything, you know, when we're supposed to make them more welcome. They run around our streets doing what they like, get away with it. Migrant beats up white man, gets away with it. White man beats up migrant and he gets locked up. You know, this is what's bloody happening. You know, when people like us say we should be more welcoming, total idiot. Like I said, may as well send cruise liners out, go bring them all up, go pick them all up. That'll smash the gangster army. Bring them all over here. Let's destroy our country and finish it off. Get it over and done with. Bye.
Kelvin, I don't think Matthew's an idiot, but I do think what he says is wrong. I agree with you on that. And I also think that migrants have been made incredibly welcome in this country, probably too welcome. I think that's part of the problem. Let's get a perspective from Simon in Derby. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Simon, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Thank you. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Hi. Yeah, I was just sorry, it's good afternoon now. Just regarding migrants or anybody working who's not got right to stay here, you need, I have to work, and I was born here, I'm 66, and I have a disclosure barring certificate which I have to produce for I'm self-employed, but I have to produce.
Yeah, I have one of those as well. I've gone through those checks. Yeah.
Well, it protects the employer, so he doesn't get fined for employing somebody who shouldn't be here, which is thousands if they get caught, and landlords as well. I'm a landlord, part-time landlord, and you have to have, if somebody is from a different country, they have to have a certificate, because I get fined as well. But it's not if you've got immigrants going into an HMO, that's fine. Bit of two standards, two Kia going off there. But anyway, I'm just saying, why can't the likes of Just Eat and all the other folk insist that people that are working for them have a DBA?
Well, I think that's a very valid point, because if you Just Eat, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, all those kind of places, I mean, they will be delivering. There will be children who will take those deliveries in. There are definitely people. I mean, I've had it myself. I don't know about you up there in Derby, Simon, but I've ordered some food, and the person who comes, maybe it's a woman on the app, and then a man comes and delivers it. I've reported this it was Uber Eats actually was the occasion I'm thinking about, but certainly, and they did get back to me and they said, oh, we'll look into this. But the fact is, there are loads of people working here illegally, and the government is saying they're doing a crackdown, but so many people don't feel enough is being done.
Yeah, I think the problem the government's got is they haven't got enough people actually checking. That's the problem, because it must be. I mean, it's absolutely rife. I mean, you've heard a few prosecutions that go, and they're very big. The fines are huge if you're employing somebody who shouldn't be here.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I just don't think there's enough people actually doing the on-the-ground checking and inspecting to say, what is going on. That might help, but a certificate would do it all, I'd have thought, and you pay for it. I mean, I have to do mine renew it every 2 years. I have to pay for it, but that's fine. But it just gives me a clean bit of health, which everybody possibly should have.
Simon, thanks for your call there. Whereabouts in Derby are you, by the way? Are you in the city itself or the Shire?
I'm in the Shire. I'm in Breaston, which is about 2 miles from Long Eaton. So
I reported from Breaston and indeed Long Eaton when I was a reporter for BBC Radio Derby back in the day. Simon. There we are. Thank you very much for your call. Appreciate that. We have a voice note on this as well from James. Let's hear what James has to say.
Hi, Peter. When I go downstairs, there's 5 or 6 delivery drivers, whatever, company drivers, parcel drivers, and none of them speak English. When they ask me to help, they barely broke English when they ask to help, I have to help Matt. Right? And you go outside the takeaways, there's millions of them, millions of these delivery drivers. Now, they're brought into this country for cheap labour for these big national corporations, isn't it? Deliveroo, Amazon. These are the people hiring them. Why ain't something done to them? It just don't make sense.
It's a perfectly valid point, James, and I wonder if these big corporations really care or just say, well, it's only a small problem, we'll just get over it, we'll just deal with it. That is too often the case. And then, of course, it's small business people, it's self-employed people like Simon we just spoke to there in Derby who get the brunt of these things and follow the rules, as Simon has been doing, yet other people aren't held to the same standard. Brian makes a brilliant point, absolutely brilliant point on text. He says, if a 16-year-old commits election fraud, how are they to be tried, as an adult or as a child? Says Brian. Very, very good point. Lisa in Birmingham says, what is happening to the Druze is horrific. Some of the footage on social media coming out of Syria is heartbreaking. Yet where are the human rights activists? Where is the outrage? These jihadi Islamists are the scourge of the world. Lisa, you make a really good point there. And I'll tell you where the human rights activists are. They're nowhere, because they don't care, because they don't have a pop at Israel, because they don't want to have a pop at Jelani. They want to say that everything in Syria is fine. Guess what? It's not. Lisa, you make a really, really good point there. And on this show, as we have done consistently for the last 4 years, and as we're going to do as long as I'm sitting in this seat, we're going to tell the truth, and we're going to make sure that the kind of stories that are neglected by other parts of the media are told. Jonathan Sacerdoti did that this morning. I learned a lot from it. I hope you did too. Lots more of your opinions coming. We'll talk about the BBC as well. Anti-Semitism training is coming their way. Not exactly a ringing endorsement when everybody in the organisation has to be trained not to hate Jews. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This
Well, I want to talk now about the BBC, and Barney Chowdhury is with me. He's a former BBC correspondent. He's editor-at-large now of Eastern Eye, former BBC social affairs correspondent, journalism lecturer himself, and member of the advisory committee for Ofcom for a number of years. Barney, great to have you on the programme. How are you doing?
Good to be back again, Peter.
What do you think it says about the BBC that they've now decided to roll out anti-Semitism awareness training after all these scandals? I mean, to me, it seems like, well, okay, fine, but also when you have to tell people don't hate Jews, it's not exactly a ringing endorsement of their impartiality.
I think there's a whole plethora of things that are going on, Peter. I was talking to sources as soon as I knew I was coming on the programme, and they've told me that it's going to be anti-Semitism training, anti-Islamophobic training is going to be rolled out across our whole industry. People like Sky Television, people like the BBC and ITV have signed up to this pledge, which has been pioneered by the TV and film charity, which is run by Marcus Ryder, and your old friend Akil Ahmed also is part of that organisation.
Great man.
Yep, and my understanding is, from talking to sources, Peter, is that the Creative Diversity Network are the people who are going to be looking at it and rolling it out with the different broadcasters. So everybody in our industry is going to be undergoing some form of training of that sort. Now, the question is it a good idea? I think it is. And the reason why I think it is because I'm not in the business of spouting hatred. I'm not in the business of doing anything but reporting accurately what is happening. And as long as I do that, I'm not in the business of creating hate or offence or crime and disorder. And as long as I do that, I think I'm a pretty good broadcaster.
The problem is that there are a lot of people who aren't great broadcasters, Barney. The fact is that the BBC and other organisations haven't represented this correctly. There have been numerous reports into all of this. There have been numerous examples as well. I mean, what did you think, for example, of Deborah Turness, who's a very, very experienced leader in journalism? She's worked for NBC, she's worked at ITV, she's now the chief executive of BBC News, pointing out that Hamas, the political wing and the military wing are two different things. I mean, they are factually two different things, but Hamas is Hamas, and Hamas has been prescribed as a terrorist organisation here in the UK, whether it's a political or, I mean, it's not military, it's terrorist wing. Yet Deborah Turness seems to be at pains to make this point this week in an all-staff call, even when there have been various feelings shown in her own leadership.
You will remember this better than me because you're Northern Irish. When it came to the IRA and Sinn Féin, it was exactly that same debate. And you'll remember...
Well, they called them terrorists. They called them terrorists on the BBC. They did that for years.
But now that times have changed, the idea of using that word terrorists is something that the BBC has got itself tied up in knots about. It's not something that I'd agree with necessarily, but if that's the BBC stance, that's the BBC stance. When is a terrorist a terrorist? Well, if you look at the overriding media, if you're Islamic, you're definitely a terrorist. If you're white right-wing and you happen to murder an MP, then you're not. You're a radical or you're an extremist. And I think that's the debate that we need to have, A, as a media, B, as a country.
I don't agree with you on that, Barney, but let's move on. In regard to Bob Villan...
It's good not to agree, Peter.
OK. In regard to Bob Villan, there still haven't been any arrests in that. That's not your fault, of course. In terms of the BBC and how they dealt with this, it's interesting, Tim Davie, the Director General, talking about that, saying that people with the live stream... I mean, what happened was that Pascal Robinson Foster, he hates his name being made public, by the way, he wants to be anonymous, so definitely don't say the words Pascal Robinson Foster. We wouldn't want Pascal Robinson Foster to be annoyed in any way. He hasn't been arrested yet. The BBC was meant to have editorial guidelines, yet they kept him on air for another 40 minutes after he said, death, death to the IDF. What should happen here, Barney?
I think that we know what should happen, which is that heads must roll. I think that's certainly the case. I certainly think that there was an incitement to murder, which is an Ofcom 3 regulation breach, and I think the BBC really ought to be fined for that, to send out that warning. I think that there ought to have been proper planning. There ought to be a news editorial judgment in part of the team if there wasn't, and I think this is an abject failure of leadership from the very lowest to the very highest part of the BBC. and I couldn't believe that somebody didn't have an off button or didn't think to pre-record it before casting it.
And you would imagine, you know, if there's something as sensitive as kneecap coming on, you're going to check what the other people around them and the other acts that you're about to broadcast. You would do a Google. You would find out. I mean, it took me about 20 seconds to find out that Bob Villan had this activist stance, that had all these opinions, for example, and it would appear that nobody did that very basic form of diligence.
Isn't that what we do as a thing all the way through? You invited me, your team invited me onto the programme. I wanted to make sure that I knew everything about it before I came on. I didn't want to sound like an idiot. So I spoke to half a dozen sources whom I trust, both inside and outside the BBC, A, to get what the current mood was, and B, to find out whether the Daily Telegraph story was actually true. And without that, without accuracy, without actually planning, you're going to set yourself up to fail. It's that old axiom, isn't it? Plan to fail, fail to plan. And that's what happened here. Now, we all have bad days at the office, but this is worse than a bad day.
And you've got literally hundreds of people working on Glastonbury. You should have, okay, they're perhaps not editorial staff, but you would imagine you would be all over this like a rash and say, who's coming on before, who's coming on afterwards, what are the other acts that we're doing, do any of them have political stances? We know loads of people in music over the years have had all sorts of political views, Sex Pistols, the Beatles, loads of different people, and now more than ever that this was the case. Yet that slip that didn't, I mean, slip through the net is about the most generous interpretation that you could give. It is, as you say, a lack of basic research.
I think I disagree with you on one point. There should have been editorial people involved in that discussion. And if there wasn't, that's the point of failure. You've got to go back and you've got to say, what are the points of failure? And as a result of that, how are we going to put it right the next time? Because there mustn't be a next time.
Yes. Tell us about the Blue Peter cat and the naming of the cat as well. This is something you mentioned, I think, to our team behind the scenes. And this was a poll, an online poll to name the cat, I think you're referring to.
That's right. So Blue Peter turned out, if my memory serves me correctly, not to have played by the rules, and the decision was already made, and there was this big investigation, and Blue Peter had to have this humble apology. And as a result of that, every single person had to, in the BBC, had to underline something called safeguarding trust. Now, can I just make a wider point on this?
Just before you do, they got a £50,000 fine from Ofcom, apparently, as a result of the name of Cookie was the clear winner, but the editor decided and the staff decided that the cat should be called Socks. So there we are.
Yes. And as a result of that, we had to go through this painful online process of safeguarding trust. I'm not sure it worked very well. But that's by the by. So on this rolling out of anti-Semitism training, I urge the BBC to do two things. One, don't rush it. Please don't rush it. Think carefully about it. And please involve your staff associations who are involved in this. So the Jewish Staff Association, please involve them. Please get people who know what they're talking about and won't interfere with editorial guidelines, but will inform your journalism. And second thing that I urge the BBC to do is to do it in some form of in-person training and not as a multiple choice question. What I mean by that is get somebody who can answer your questions, because that's the most basic need. Why we as journalists love to know why, how and what. We have a multi-choice question, as we did with a diversity training, much of which I didn't believe was true, and completely lost my faith on it. We're going to have problems. And so this is a once in a moment time where we've realised that something has gone wrong. Let's put it right.
Okay, Barney, thank you very much indeed. Editor-at-Large of ECHR Now, former BBC Social Affairs correspondent, journalism lecturer and member of the advisory committee for Ofcom as well. What do you think of what he said there? 0344 499 1000. We'll take some of your calls after the break. Stay with us.
it will take a catastrophic event, I fear, to get people to agree to move it to Hyde Park. And you're right. And you listed some of the additional features that could be implemented in the park, including public lavatories. But you're right. I mean, the clear up. I've already quoted the policing cost, but the actual cost of the event to individuals, homeowners, businesses is probably another several £million.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Paul's been in touch about Asylum.
Morning, Peter. It's Paul in Burnley. Just want to make a comment regarding your guest, Matthew. He says that the asylum seekers are just simply seeking a better life. What he doesn't seem to understand is their presence, while trying to get a better life, means for the people that are already here, it's making their life worse. They're not fleeing poverty. They're not fleeing war and persecution when they leave France. Everybody knows that they're setting sail for Treasure Island. Cheers, Peter. Thank you.
Paul, I think that makes total sense. Don't disagree with any of it. Michael's been in touch as well.
Hello, Peter. It's Michael from Norwich, the dustbin of the world. I heard the crackpot with you today talking about interpreters and we're not treating all these foreigners nicely. Well, how on earth can you pay for interpreters? I feel sorry for children who go to school now because it was hard enough for me at school when everybody spoke English and the teacher spoke English. It was hard enough for me to learn all the subjects without being in a classroom where nobody speaks a common language. The common language is English. And if you're a child that cannot speak English, you mustn't even go to school. And you can't send people to their houses to teach them. So basically, you can't go to school. Or you go in a classroom full of people that can't speak English. But the trouble is now, when we've got so many migrants living here who can't speak English, it's not so easy to put them all in one classroom to sort out themselves. It's a nightmare now. It's a long message, but I should have written it down first. See ya.
Michael, thanks for your thoughts there. Now, Matthew Hilbert is not a crackpot. He's not an idiot. He's just someone I think the vast majority of us strongly disagree with. But, Michael, I think you make a lot of very good points there. Brian's been in touch as well. He says, I don't agree with Matthew, but he wants us to be a good and compassionate society. He defends that. Not well, but good on him. He won't lower his bar. The trouble is, it's the system that's broken, and that's down to politicians. Don't kill the messenger. Let's speak to another Matthew, who's in Staffordshire. Matthew, I think migration is on your mind. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter.
Hi.
Yes, one point that I've not heard anybody discuss, that if these illegal migrants have come into the country, they've committed a criminal act.
Yep.
And if you've committed a criminal act, surely they should be under some kind of house arrest. So they're not free to go about and commit these crimes that they're obviously doing.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. It is an illegal act to come to this country. They are illegal migrants as a result of arriving on our shores illegally. I have made that point today, Matthew, but it's a very, very good one and one that we should certainly keep in mind. Thanks for your thoughts on that. Lottie is in Lancashire as well. She's given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Lottie, what would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Hi there. Very well. What about yourself, Lottie?
Good. I'm okay. So these invaders, migrants, whatever you want to call them, come into our country. They get free electricity, free gas, free food, free housing, free everything. So why on earth are we paying for gas and electric? Why are we paying our council tax? They don't pay council tax. So maybe if we all did that and hit them in the pocket, because that's the only place that they care about, hit them in the pocket, what they're going to do is they'll be onto the government saying, do something about this.
Yeah.
What else are we going to do about this problem? We can't go out on the streets and protest because we're far right. So what else are we going to do to stop this? Because I live in a lovely, lovely, lovely town, and over the last 2 years, it's unbelievably changing. And I am angry every single day of the week.
It's not fair, is it, Lottie?
It's not fair. It's absolutely disgusting. And why are they doing it? Why? Why are they bringing all these people over? We're not stupid. We all know that can be stopped.
And
so if we send the vote, right, so we can't, all these votes back to France, what are France going to do to us? What are they going to do? Take us to court? So what?
Do you think the government cares, Lottie? Do you think the government has any plan? Do you think they care?
Do you know what? I think this country has been picked. This country is like the bowels of Europe. It really is. We get all the S here. Okay. And I think this country has been picked for just let anybody in. And us, me, I'm 65 years of age. I own businesses. I'm sick of paying my tax and going, I wonder how much tax money I'm going to get back out of that.
Well,
absolutely zero. Zero. And I am done with it.
And you've done nothing wrong, Lottie. You've done absolutely nothing wrong. You've played by the rules. You've paid your taxes, and there's so little that you're getting back. You're looking to your government to say, sort this out, and they're not sorting it out.
You go to sit in A&E if you even dare to go and sit in A&E these days, and you're put to the back of the queue all the time. And you know what's even worse about this situation? These buggers are walking round our streets with a great big sodding grin on their face. Laughing at us every single day.
Okay. Lottie, I think a lot of people will share your anger. Thank you for sharing it with us. And that's Lottie, who is a perfectly reasonable person making perfectly reasonable points about a community that has changed out of all recognition in the last couple of years, her village in Lancashire. Let's get a bit more from Los Angeles now, because the fire department's captain Adam van Gerpen has told reporters at the scene there are at least 31 people who've been injured in Los Angeles. He says right now we have a total of approximately 31 patients. All of those patients are in the process of being treated and transported and evaluated. Apparently somebody lost consciousness inside a vehicle and drove into a taco cart and then ultimately ran into a large number of people who were outside a club in East Hollywood. That is according to the Los Angeles Fire Department captain Adam van Gerpen. Let's hear from Jason, a voice note from him. This is the story about officers being told they can't now wear their uniform off duty at pride parades for one of the police forces. Of course, there are many police forces, but the High Court has said that this shouldn't happen. This is what Jason has to say about this.
Peter, I'm a retired police officer of 30 years service. During my time, I was refused permission to wear my uniform when off duty for a wedding and 2 funerals. Why is it that officers can wear a uniform on duty for pride? The public don't know they're off duty. They think that's police resources being allowed to do as they please. It is the wrong image, shouldn't happen, absolutely 100% wrong. Absolutely disgraceful. Good show.
Jason, that is a very, very valid point, a very reasonable point. Thank you for it. Sharon has been in touch about the BBC.
Hi, Peter. I would forget about the BBC licensing debate. It is now time for the BBC to be completely abolished. The entire organisation seems to have become abhorrently anti-Semitic, in my view, due to their left-wing bias and diversity hiring agenda over the years. They have also employed a variety of criminals and have been beset by constant scandals. Even their news, which used to be of a high standard, and especially with respect to Israel, is not even even factual. It would need a complete clean out of the senior administration and all employees exhibiting anti-Semitic and racist views to continue as our state broadcaster.
Sharon, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate them. Let's hear from Clive. Let's hear a voice note from Clive if we can. We'll just get that to you in a second. In the meantime, let's speak to Grace in London, who's been in touch about Syria. Grace, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi. I just noticed that a lot of people who were sending in messages, or whose messages you were reading out, seem to, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but seem to be very, very angry with everyone who's coming over here. But evidently, from your discussion about the situation in Syria, there are some people who do have genuinely good reason to come. I heard someone saying that
there's no doubt about that, and there are some people who are genuine asylum seekers. I've been a very compassionate country, for example, to people from Hong Kong coming here, from people from Ukraine. There are people, I've interviewed who have had Ukrainians living in their homes, for example. So I think we're a compassionate country, all right, Grace. I think the problem is when we feel that compassion is taken for granted.
I guess I would even hesitate to refer to our country as a whole, because I think that each person is an individual with their own views and actions. And while some of the people who are coming over have plainly done horrendous things in this country, an awful lot of the people coming over are completely independent human beings who are not responsible for what those individuals have done. So I think we need to, ultimately the government needs to have a more nuanced way of assessing who has good reason to come, because I completely get that some people are coming without any justification, but there are also evidently some people who do have just reasons.
The point, though, Grace, I suppose, within this is that, France is a safe country, so it's not as if they're fleeing persecution in France.
Yeah, but if you can't speak any French and you can speak a bit of English, you're going to probably want to come to the place where you might have...
Well, I'd love to go and live in Australia. I think Australia would be great to live in, but at the same time, I know that there are reasons why I can't live there, because the government would need to assess that and do it properly. So maybe it's the system as a whole that needs to be reformed.
I think the system as a whole obviously needs reform. I think that we as a country, which is far wealthier than most countries in the world, need to take a bit of responsibility, especially given that some of the wealth that we have as a country has been the result of things that have happened in the past which have contributed to some of the current disruption. But, we're lucky to be born in a country that has higher standards of living than most of the world has. As much as the cost of living is annoying and things are breaking down, we still have better standards of living than other places. And if we're going to say we're a Christian country, we cannot just pretend that we don't care about people who are fleeing.
I think we do, though, Grace. But listen, thanks for your call. I really appreciate it. That was Grace in London there. Let's hear from Craig.
Good morning, Peter. This is Craig in Ilkley. So the deal that we have with France, instead of just giving them a lump sum with very little in return, actually I think we should restate it so it's based on actuals. So, for example, we could pay the French €1,000 for every illegal that they stop. So then they're incentivized to go out in patrols or walk along the beaches with their Stanley knives to slash the boats. So, okay, we've stopped a boat with 50 people on, €50,000. Maybe that's not a bad thing, actually, because spending €50,000 to stop one boat, actually, in the grand scheme of things, is a really good price to pay, because once they get to the UK, each one will be costing €50,000 a year to house and feed and clothe, etc., and give them their iPhones and 60 gigabyte a month SIM cards, etc. So €1,000 per illegal that's stopped, probably not a bad deal.
Thanks for that, Craig. Let's hear a final voice note from Matt.
Peter, Matt in Hove here. Just on the CEO and the head of HR having their affair and getting caught out. Personally, I think it's disgraceful, cheating, and how awful for both their families. But for the two that were involved, they are not stupid people. They knew exactly what would happen if they got caught. They're in the same company. They probably knew that they would get the heave-ho when they get caught, but they didn't care. And I don't want to hear any of this claptrap of, I fell in love. What a load of old nonsense. The pair of them knew what was going to happen. And you know what? Don't moan when you get caught.
I think some fair points in there, Matt. Let's hear a final thought from Peter on the phones. Peter, you have some thoughts on vote to 16. What would you like to say?
Yeah, Keir Starmer giving the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds, thinking that's what's going to win the election. The only way he's going to win the election is if he gives the vote to the illegal immigrants.
Well, let's hope he doesn't do that. Peter, do you think 16-year-olds should have the vote?
Well, to be honest, I don't think half of them will vote Labour anyway. They're more likely to go Green, if anything.
I think that's a fair point. I think quite a few of them will go Reform too. I mean, Nigel Farage has a huge following on TikTok as well. Peter, interesting thoughts there. Thank you. Sorry I was so short there. We just got time is against us, but that was Peter in Nottingham. I want to say a huge thanks to the top team behind the glass today. I've been working very hard. Cal Duffy has been the producer. Chris Jacobs, the setup producer. Tech Up Dave has been extremely busy today with all the voice notes. Thank you to Tech Up Dave. Also, Sophie McDavid has been the assistant producer, her first outing in the role proper, so well done to her. Great to have her on the team. Naya Saravanchi and Davis Fang have been the visual producers. Ayabal Farah is the video editor, and Dean Spencer has been the weekend editor. He's off for some cider now at the pub. Tomorrow weekend breakfast is on Talk with Russell Quirk. He will be here in place of Alex Phillips. Alex is going to be here all week filling in for Julia Hartley Brewer. I'm going to be here tomorrow